Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's City Council meeting. Thank you for being here. And if we can, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brigham?
Here.
Vice Mayor Russell?
Here.
Councilmember Walter?
Here.
Councilmember Bagby?
Present.
Mayor Paula?
Here.
And Everett?
Here.
Okay, thank you. Report out of closed session, City Attorney?
Mayor, the council considered a few items tonight, but there was no reportable action taken.
Thank you. Okay, conflict of interest declaration. Does any council member have anything to declare here? Okay, seeing none. Agenda review. Any changes and or deletions to the agenda from any council member? Any member of the public? No? Okay. Move forward. I do want to say on the agenda, I'm going to move our student liaison report to follow the consent calendar. Our student liaison has a school activity this evening, and he needs to leave at 7. So as soon as we do the consent, I'm going to recognize you to give you a report. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to open up the public comment. Any person wishing to speak to the City Council on any item not listed on the agenda may do so at this time. Members of the public have the right to speak on any item on the council agenda during that item. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. Each person wishing to speak must go to the podium when advised by the mayor and speak directly into the microphone, and you will have 3 minutes. Would anybody like to speak on an item not on the agenda? Please come on down. Please sign. There's a pad up there. Put your name for the record. And good
evening. My name is Sam Beeson, Cloverdale resident. I'm here on behalf of Cloverdale Lions Club, but also other service organizations in Cloverdale. We are hoping to have the council put into effect a waiver of usage, of cost of usage of places like the city park, town square, any areas that require funds to be outlaid. To rent the city park for like an organization like Lions Club costs about $500 by the time you pay all the fees. That's 2 pairs of eyeglasses, it's a scholarship, it's an improvement project for around town, you know. The amount of money, it's a lot, and we would like to be able to use the facilities more, but it limits us and takes away from the community. So we're hoping that, and not just for us, Boy Scouts, you know, Kiwanis, Rotary, everybody, it can be set into policy that we can walk in, we don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops or anything, we can just walk in, you know, fill out an application and move forward. So hopefully the council can look into doing something for us. So.
great, thank you.
Okay.
Any comments from council?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
I've got about 300 pair of eyeglasses. Where do I drop them off?
You can actually bring it down to the store. I'll take care of them for you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Walter?
Thank you. Sam, thank you for coming and sharing that with us. I know you and I had talked about that personally, and we will be discussing issues like that later on this evening. But thank you for coming up under public comment, because I know you can't stay for that whole meeting, but we will be talking about that.
Okay.
And I'll let you know what the outcome is.
Okay, thank you.
Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Okay. Would anybody else like to address the City Council on an item not on the agenda? Tony, come on up, please.
Good evening, Mayor Pala, Vice Mayor Russell, distinguished members of the City Council. My name is Tony Giraldi. I am a resident of Santa Rosa, and I always love coming to Cloverdale. I just love to drive up here and driving to town, there's a big smile on my face, and this is Cloverdale week for me. I get to spend some time here. I'm the General Operations Manager of Airport Express, Sonoma County Airport Express, which happens to be the primary sponsor of the Sonoma County Scholarship Program. I'm also the Secretary and Treasurer of this phenomenal program that's existed in Sonoma County for 72 years. We currently have our 71st Miss Sonoma County and our Miss Sonoma County's Outstanding Teen. They could not be with us tonight, but we have a very unique situation happening here in Cloverdale. We've got a phenomenal young lady, your current Cloverdale Citrus Fair Queen, and she will be competing at the 72nd Miss Sonoma County Scholarship Competition that's taking place on March 3rd, 7 p.m. at the Spreckles Performing Arts Center in Rohnert Park. I would like to formally invite all of you to attend. You'll be with well over 20 other elected officials in Sonoma County. You'll get introduced, and you'll have the pride of rooting on a outstanding young lady as she represents Cloverdale, and possibly become our next Miss Sonoma County. The next Miss Sonoma County, she'll be making well over 100 appearances throughout Sonoma County, as well as representing Sonoma County and Fresno at the Miss California competition. And from there, Miss America. So we'll see what happens. It's been a while, but keep our fingers crossed. I'm also a judge this Friday at the Cloverdale Citrus Fair Queen competition, which this will be my 6th year, and I love doing that. So you'll be hearing from your current Cloverdale Citrus Fair Queen here momentarily. And again, we'd love to have you in Rohnert Park on March 3rd, and join us. It'd be great to have you there. So thank you.
Great. And Tony, will you be sending something to each of us on the
Yeah, I'll drop you an
specifics?
email. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Yes.
Hello, my name's Hannah Bareshi. As you heard and may know, I'm the current Cloverdale Citrus Fair Queen. I'm 17 and I'm currently a senior at Cloverdale High School. So this Friday, I will be giving up my title to one of 4 amazing young women whom I would be so proud to give to any one of them. I would really like if you all could come. It's at 7:30 p.m. at the Citrus Fair on Friday. We also incorporated a Little Princess program this year, so there'll be about 10 little girls on stage dancing with me, which is super fun that I think you'll all enjoy. As Tony said, I also decided to run for Miss Sonoma County this year. I was really inspired by my year as Cloverdale Citrus Fair Queen to continue pursuing service projects and committing myself to my community in the same way that the Citrus Fair Queen does through the Miss Sonoma County organization. One of my favorite appearances I think I made this year was at the car show. My dad used to show cars at the car show, so I've grown up around there, and it was always my dream as a little girl to be the Cloverdale Citrus Fair Queen. I had always seen her in the paper, at the car show, at the fair, and I got to live out that dream this year, which was amazing. It was so great to just go through all the activities I had always grown up wanting to do, and I actually got to do them. I really hope that you all can come watch another young lady become the Cloverdale Citrus Fair Queen. It's an amazing opportunity that has made me so much more confident, a much stronger person. I've made so many connections and learned how to communicate so much better. And those are things I'll carry with me throughout my life, and hopefully things that I will carry with me as your 72nd Miss Sonoma County. So again, I would like to invite you to that on March 3rd in Rohnert Park at the Spreckles Performing Arts Center. I really hope you all can come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, would anybody else like to address the city council? Yes, come forward, please. And put your name on the tablet, if you would, please, for the record.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, council people. I would like to find out if there
Could
have
you
been...
state your name, please? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Robin Dunsing.
Robin, thank you.
I wrote it down. I thought you guys... Anyway, I was wondering if there's been any rules or regulations set in yet in Cloverdale on the growing a pot. And I believe at the last city council meeting that I was at, Officer Parker, and I think it was Mr. David Kelly, that we, the three of us, were supposed to meet and maybe throw some ideas around on that subject. So,
So I'm sorry, what exactly is your question, though?
well, my question is, what are the rules and regulations about growing pot in residential areas?
Gotcha. And the city council did adopt an ordinance, and that ordinance is available, so I'm sure Chief Parker could sit down with you and walk you through that.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the last,
Yeah.
it might have been in November, but at that city council meeting, Mr. Gus Wolters had said to me and everyone here that Officer Parker, and I believe it was Mr. David Kelly, the three of us were supposed to get together and talk about that.
Okay. So, did you have something to say?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize if that meeting never took place. I'm not sure if something was lost, if you were supposed to contact them or if they were going to contact you. But David, if I can impose on you, maybe to give a business card or accept a phone call tomorrow?
Why don't we do this? Why don't we get name and phone number, and we'll have somebody call you from City Hall.
Okay,
And I apologize for that.
that's okay. Can I bring up anything else?
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
I have a concern because I turn on School Street quite often to go home. And the light or the billboard they have at the high school, when it's dark out, it just blinds you. You can't even see that turn. If maybe when it gets dark until the sun comes up, it can be turned off. So,
I'll relay that. We have a school-city subcommittee meeting, which encompasses the two school trustees as well as the superintendent to them. I know that's been brought up before. I'd certainly encourage you to reach out to the school directly, and they have their own board of directors as well, trustees. But I'll relay that message at our next meeting with them.
And my last item is, there's not, at least it's written, no skateboarding, no bicycle riding on the sidewalks. That goes on constantly, and I do frequent the plank, and there's a lot of times, and maybe I'm included in this group, of older people coming out who walk slow or with a cane, and these kids and adults, it's not just kids, it's adults that just, that if the person just turned, they'd be run over. And it seems like that is not being addressed in this town. Okay. I know what it's like. I wasn't even riding. I had one foot on the ground, and I got reamed really bad by an officer. So I don't see anybody, being talked to over that matter. And it is dangerous.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll ask Chief Parker if you could talk to the officers, make sure they're aware. Yeah.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to? Yes, sir. Come on up, please.
Good evening. I'm Dan Bratchelani. I live at 123 Great Gables in the Cottages. And I'm here tonight with a group of other cottage homeowners. And we have an ongoing concern over the amount we pay into the landscape district, $88,000 this year, and the amount of services we receive. Tonight, we would like to comment on item 3 in the consent calendar, if we could.
Very well.
Thank you.
We'll make sure we pull that. Thank you. Would anybody else like? Yes, come on down.
Good evening.
Good
Thank you very
evening.
much. My name is Clay Skelton. I'm a resident of Cloverdale. A couple of issues I'd like to speak with you this evening. One is speed and cops. How fast is too fast? As you're aware, we had a problem one evening, I think it was the evening, an officer was going to a call and was trying to get there as quick as possible and lost control and overturned her vehicle. So how fast is too fast? Is 100 miles an hour in town going to a call too fast? Is 125 miles an hour too fast? This is something that I would like the council to address, sitting with the police association and trying to figure out how fast is too fast. If the officer is down, I mean, yes, we want to get there as soon as possible for that. This is next is going to be the open space area, the Porterfield new open space. Does the city have a medevac procedure for search and rescue? I think this is something that I don't know if the city has something developed with the fire department, with the police department. We just had a resident that injured himself quite seriously, and yeah, it was wonderful that the police department did locate him, and he was physically carried out, I think, brought out through the police car and then transferred to an ambulance and then taken to the hospital. Regarding the open space rules, we need to have some signage. And it'd be nice if the city could adopt some rules. Sunrise to sunset, overnight parking, overnight camping, barbecues, leash law. In Sonoma County, there is a leash law that the leash can't be longer than 6 feet long. And also, we also request a dog pickup station as well, so that people can pick up after their animals. And again, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for all your wonderful donation to our city, to making it great. Thank you. You're making it great again.
Thank you. So, okay, so a lot of those things, City Manager, do you want to address some of those on the park?
Let me just kind of click off the issues that Clay brought up. Number one, the issue of the officer responding that had the rollover accident. It was late at night, responding to what was reported to be a home invasion in progress, which turned out to be a crank telephone call. That officer was seriously injured, has been spent some time in the hospital, but has been recovering, and it has been investigated, and it is as this council knows, I can't discuss with you personnel matters, but that issue is in hand. But the officer was responding to at that time a phone call where the citizen was reporting that an invader was inside the home, so they were trying to get there as quickly as possible when the mishap occurred. In terms of the open space area, if there is, I'm very familiar with the open space area. I would encourage anybody using the open space area to carry their cell phone. So the entire open space area has cell phone coverage. So if somebody, it is a wild area, and it is unimproved. So people are encouraged to use the area with caution. And in terms of the incident you were talking about, Clay, a police officer responded to get there quickly to give rescue to the citizen. They drove their patrol car to where as close they could to get to the citizen, and then drove them out to the fire department. There was some discussion that the police and fire department didn't have keys to the gate. That's not true. It's a standard public works lock. The fire department gave rescue at the bottom of the Tank Road. I discussed it with the fire chief, and of course, fire chief has the key to that gate. But of course, the fire department is never shy if they don't have a padlock to a gate. the fire department has a right to cut off any lock on a closed gate and enter. And I think we're all familiar that if there was a delay, that's how the fire department would have entered. But I did speak to Chief Jenkins about it. There was not a problem with this rescue in the open space area. The last issue is camping. Clay, I'm up in the open space district area. I have not seen, I'm often jogging up there early in the morning. I haven't seen anybody camping at the end of Skyview. But if there is, it is already a violation of city ordinance to be camping. So call 2150, or I know Clay knows how to get a hold of me because I hear from him often. We're happy to be up there, especially if there's a camping complaint. In terms of dogs being on leash, it is clearly marked that dogs have to be on leash, and I think, Clay, you know that dogs have to be on leash. Well, I think you know. I've seen you without your dog on a leash up there. Maybe we all need to follow the rules. Okay. So with that being said, I think that responds to most of the.
So do we have signage up there?
There is signage that says dogs must be on leash.
Right.
On consent calendar tonight, you will be approving the improvements at the end of Skyview, which will include a informational kiosk, improving the parking at the end of Skyview with a disabled parking spot and a drinking fountain. And there is plans as part of that for a doggy potty station to be at the end of at the trailhead facilities. And let me reiterate, this was a big issue with the people in Del Webb. This is not a parking lot. This is the improvement of the end of Skyview so that there is more accessible parking. If the council takes action on the consent calendar tonight under item 5, you'll be awarding those improvements to Fieldstone Construction Company.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council? Okay. Okay, thank you, City Manager. All right, anybody else want to address the City Council on anything that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment, and we'll move on to the consent calendar. All items under the consent calendar be considered together by one action of the council unless the council or a member of the public requests that the item be removed. We've already had a request that item 3 be removed, so we'll pull item 3. Is any other items? Seeing none, okay, I'll entertain a motion to...
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to approve the consent calendar as submitted with the removal of item number 3.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do we need roll call? Yeah, since there are resolutions there, let's do a roll call vote on that, please.
Councilmember Brigham.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Russell.
Aye.
Councilmember Walter.
Aye.
Councilmember Bagby. Aye. Mayor Paula.
Aye.
Everett.
Okay, so let's go to item number 3, which is resolution number 004-2018, appointing the engineer of work for the Cloverdale Landscaping and Lighting Assessment District for fiscal year 2018-2019. Let's be our city engineer.
It's to do the work, it's not the report of how much they've discovered. That'll come later.
Okay, so it's the first step.
First step.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of council? Okay, I'd like to open this up for public comment. Would anybody like to address, come forward, please, and write your name in the book if you don't mind, and
Yeah, I'm Dan Brecciolini again.
if you could speak into the microphone, please, because some people can't hear you very well. There you go, thank you.
Okay. Concerning the engineer's report, we were shocked to read that our next engineering report cost can go up to $19,200. This is a 37% increase over last year's cost of $14,000. 2 years ago, the increase was $400. Coastline's proposal gives no clue for the cost increase. Actually, it sort of makes a case against it when they state that they've been preparing this report for 17 years, know the requirements of the government codes and the city procedures. In addition, they state their services are on a time and material basis not to exceed 19.2. But even if the actual costs are less, we still are required to pay the full budgeted amount in 19.2. Actually, if their costs go over the budget amount, we're still on the hook for that too. We as homeowners didn't initially vote for this landscape district. The developers did. We don't get to vote on assessment increases. You, the city council, does. Since assessments are part of our property tax bill, basically, you're affecting our property tax. So you, the city council, elected members, have a duty to control costs for all 599 households in the Cloverdale Lighting and Landscape District, because there is no one else that's going to do it. To lower the cost of the engineering report, I've come up with several options. Have your staff engineer prepare this report. Any certified engineer can do it. It's not rocket science. It's pretty simple if you read the law. 2, request bids from at least 2 other engineering firms. 17 years is a long time without testing the market. And then 3, if nothing else, can we at least negotiate with Coastline to lower their costs? We're not building a bridge or a high-rise apartment complex here. We're just trying to establish a reasonable budget for our landscape district, and it shouldn't cost this much to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address? Please come forward and sign your name on the book there, if you would, please.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the same thing as Dan.
Could you state your name, please?
Pardon
State
me,
your
Howard
name.
Adler.
Thank you.
Live on Buckeye and
Thank you.
up in the cottages. And this just doesn't feel right to me. The only thing that Paul said to me before was that this is such a big outfit, really big, and that they've been doing it a really long time. Well, that always says to me, getting jaded, not questioned enough, resting on their laurels, or too big. I don't believe in too big to fail. I think the more distant you get from the project, the more you're likely to miss something or assume that everybody's just putting up with what it is. My only criteria for this outfit is to look at what they've done at the far end of the whole thing is the product. Well, I've been given to question if we're being overbilled or double billed, and I can't answer to that, but I'm going to look into it. But what I can see is that the results of calling on this outfit to do this and the reactions to what they suggest and the manifestation, the product has failed. The trees are dying. The frogs have died in the creek right after the Roundup application. The fellas in the orange jumpsuits from the prison who came in to weed whack killed all the trees. They girdled them, is what you call it, when they weed whack around and take away the bark. All those trees are going to be getting even worse than they look now. So I'm talking about, I question this outfit because apparently they've missed a thing or two. I don't know where they are in the process of quality control or seeing that the outcome looks like their prediction, but there's a breakdown along the way. Now, I was a landscape and maintenance gardener for 30 years. I never had to advertise. I always had a waiting list of people who wanted my attention because I made sure that they were happy and that we were both solvent. And that's what I expect from now being the customer, is that the product gets done. And if it's not, I'm looking, well, is it the boots on the ground? And I've talked to the fellows who maintain it. They are way overburdened and underfunded. So it's above the boots on the ground, and somewhere between the boots on the ground and the butts in the chairs, there's a breakdown. And if this is the very first step, I say let's give a big question to if a smaller, more respondent group looking at it for the first time might come up with some fresh solutions instead of tolerating well, come up and look around the landscape with me. I'll give you a list of 10 things that were not only done wrong, but then not corrected, and it's just getting worse. I walked a whole lot of times up and down to the top of the mountain, and I cleaned up litter every time I went. After each time I cleaned, it was months before the litter came back. Well, I'm only here 2 years, but in the time that I've been here, I've seen the trees get twice as bad as they were, and the graffiti around the park and the areas I walk is increasing. More and more, and I didn't see this 2 years ago when the frogs were chirping, people put the poop in the dog bag, but now they're just throwing it in the disregard of the weeds and the dying trees. This is the way it spreads. You clean up, it stays clean. You disregard it, the people get the hint and start to come in from other areas and go, hey, we can go get rowdy in there or litter. And I gotta take Dan to task, because I've learned that you don't just attack the people in charge. I know, I've seen it on TV. If you don't get answers, question the questioner, right? So I say, Dan, don't get on the public supervisors like they're not doing their job. Give them a chance to set up a meeting and hear all your complaints in a lot of detail, Dan, before you assume they're not doing their job. Let them answer in complete sentences, like what the qualifications of an outfit are, and not just how long they've been serving. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address? Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is John Moak. I'm at 310 Buckeye Circle, and as you probably are aware by now, there is a significant concern with the engineering report. I've had a cursory glance at it, and there are some inconsistencies there. What is glaring is the fact that the price increase and the scope of the work stays the same. That is obviously not acceptable. So you need to take a look at that. It's a management issue, and whoever is in charge or is charged with looking at these things, it's all of you or maybe one of you here, you need to take a look at it because it is a concern. As I look at our situation in Section 3, I see that we pay about $88,000 to the maintenance of all the specific areas around the cottages, and I can only agree with what has been said before about the issue. That is, it is dismal. It looks really bad, and if I look for a result of the $88,000 spent, I cannot find it. There are no significant results to be seen. The material is dead, it's dying, it's drying out, and it is really not in good shape. It is in bad shape, and it has been for about 3 or 4 years. That's the time we've lived here. So what I suggest is that, as we talk about the maintenance of all the areas, is that I looked at a list, and there was about $26,000 allotted for new plant material. I'd say take the plan of what it is today, turn it over, and start with a new page, a blank page. And what I would suggest to you is look at it from a whole different point of view. And I'm looking at less is best. So reduce the plant material, cap all the water spigots that no longer will be used then, save water, and fill it in with bark. So it's less maintenance, less plant material to spend money on, less water to spend money on, a win-win for everybody. So these are a couple items that I brought up tonight. They're significant to us, and we're looking forward to see the results of our attendance here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Would anybody else like to address the city council on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public comment and bring it back to city council. Start with Melanie, anything to say?
Not right now.
Okay, Councilmember Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know how many of the folks that live in Christofferson attended last year's workshop that we did. But we put on a workshop for every lighting and landscape district for folks to express their concerns. Dan, I believe you were here for that as well. So I really walked away from that workshop we did last year, and I can only hope we're going to do them again this year, that we pretty much explained every line item of the expenses that were on the report. And Dan, you had mentioned that you weren't part of voting for the lighting and landscape district, that was done by the contractor. But Jose, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that homeowners association is entitled to go out and get their own landscaper. Is that correct?
They could definitely do that to supplement. I know that as soon as the landscape and lighting district was set, there are certain charges that are applied yearly. If the homeowners association had their own landscaping company, they had their own services they paid for, in theory, they could be discussing with the city whether the city needed all that amount. But the set amount is that amount is already set by vote. The city would have options of changing that.
If I might give a little clarity here.
The public comment's been closed. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's some confusion. There's two ways under state law to handle amenities in neighborhoods such as we have in the cottages. You have what's called a homeowners association, is one way. And we have homeowners associations in Cloverdale, so that's how people can get confused. So homeowners associations in Cloverdale would include Clover Springs, Rancho de los Amigos are two examples that people know. The other way that developers can set up for amenities is to do a lighting and landscape district, which the provisions are set forth in state law on how you do a lighting and landscape district. In the case of the cottages, it's a lighting and landscape district. And so this is a procedure that we go through on an annual basis. I would anticipate that, again, there will be workshops. Every year that I've been here as the city manager, we've done at least one workshop. Sometimes we've done 2 or 3 workshops where we talk to people about their concerns. Within the cottages, I do know that last fall, some additional planting was done, and there are plans to do some more planting to address concerns that we had heard at last year's workshop about the condition of the landscaping. And in terms of Coastline, I just took a quick look at the scope of work. It is a not to exceed agreement, time and materials. And I think what we've been finding, though, in the last few years is because we have more public input, we do more workshops. It does call for more response. So I believe what you're probably seeing is Coastline anticipating that there's going to be more work this year than they have seen in past years based on what has happened in the past several years. So I just want to make sure that back to the point about homeowners association, in terms of lighting and landscaping districts, we're not working with homeowners associations. In a homeowners association, the homeowners association pays for its landscaping and has to keep it up according to the developer's agreement. In a lighting and landscaping district, the election was made for the city to do it.
And I misspoke by saying homeowners association. What I was trying to get at is there an alternative for the folks in Christopherson where they can go out and form their own, get their own landscapers to come in and do the work for them?
Dissolution of maybe the district and the formation of an HOA.
You could, the city could hire a private landscaper to do the work, and this has always kind of been an issue in the time that I've been here as a city manager, is we have tried to keep the number of employees limited, because that's, labor is one of your biggest expenses. The crew does work really hard. Last year, we did bring in seasonal workers to help in the landscape district, and I think we did see some improvements because the seasonal worker we were able to dedicate to mowing in the parks. That allowed the 2 dedicated landscapers to be able to put more time into the district. So that was, I anticipate that you'll probably see that more in the upcoming budget season, because it did, from staff's point of view, it was an effective way to go to hire a seasonal worker to help with mowing. But for the homeowners to hire their own landscapers to work in the common areas, it presents a considerable challenge.
Okay. Well, it just seems every year there's no satisfaction. You're telling us that there was planting done last fall of flowers, and they're shaking their heads no, it hasn't been done. So
I can double check with the city engineer. I had contact with Hector, and I believe in this zone some planting was done last fall.
You are correct.
So, okay.
Okay. So before we go too far, Vice Mayor.
Well, I don't know, I have to take some advice from our attorney, since I'm one of the 2 people here who lives in the cottages. Am I permitted to discuss this?
I think at this moment, it's not an agendized item. It is an agendized item regarding the landscape, but the discussion,
Okay.
I know that normally we end up splitting off due to conflict issues.
Just wanna
So
make
I would just be careful about definitely the discussion portion of it. But regarding the comments, we could always take a look at what the options are, but the landscape and lighting district is formed already now, and when that was formed, it sets an amount, which gets usually a cost of living, a CPI increase every year, but there is a kind of a maximum with the slight increase a year. We could always take a look at, what options there are of whether that's, if the landscaping is being supplemented by others and no longer is the city having to go in there, then the city charges less. We could look at what options there are, because if folks aren't satisfied. But those could be options that we could start looking at. We haven't explored that yet, but we could definitely discuss that.
Just to clarify, I want to clarify one point, though. Those options would require some type of performance that would meet, so the landscape would be equal to or better. It just can't let everything die.
That is correct. And that's the difficulty of when you set up a landscape and lighting district. There's supposed to be some standards there. If you don't do the landscape and lighting district, the city doesn't do it. And if it was a homeowners association, usually there'd be an agreement. Usually when the developer forms a subdivision, creates a homeowners association, there's usually CCNRs. There's other types of regulations. There's other regulations of maintenance in that neighborhood. I don't know. I'm not familiar with this neighborhood, but it sounds to me from the city manager that that's not in place at this moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Attorney Sanchez, is it permissible for me to give an opinion that I would give to anybody who had the similar
I think
complaint in terms of what you've just said?
Vice Mayor, yes, just general.
Yeah, just a general thing. This would be my answer to everyone who
and just
came with it. When I get a number of people who come with a complaint more than 1 year, I think what it requires is for us to bring that into the city hall and start taking a look at it. And that is my advice to everyone, and I think my track record shows that that's my advice to everybody. And what you've just talked about would be part of the learning process. Whether we do this as part of a workshop or separately, that would be up to the powers that be.
And just for the benefit of the public, the vice mayor is just being careful just due to conflict issues because she does live in that
That's
area.
it, that's my comment.
Thank you.
After
Mary Ann. Go ahead, Mary Ann. Do you have any comments?
Oh, I just have to kind of agree with Carol. I think this is something that's been going on now for a few years. And Dan's been here a few times and other people from that district. We certainly, it wouldn't hurt to maybe planning and community development subcommittee or maybe an ad hoc group to just sit down and talk to them. And I mean, I know you look at it, you think, well, $88,000, that's a hell of a lot of money. And so they could hire their own person that would do nothing but work on their property. But I can see it as a long legal thing. First, you'd have to dissolve the lighting and landscaping district. Then it would go on and on and on. And then who is going to police it? Are you guys going to get a homeowners association? So I think it's time that we sit down and have I'd like to take a walk around the neighborhood. If one of you would give me a guide, so I know what the heck I'm looking at. But I'm certainly willing to talk and meet about it. It's easy to just email me at my desk.
Thank you. Councilmember Bagby.
Actually, Councilmember Brigham touched on my question. I was just wanted a clarification of what are the possibilities of the dissolution of a lighting and landscape district and a formation of an HOA, and what does that look like?
Holy
if
cow.
it exists. I'm sorry. Because what I'm hearing, I know I'm new on the council, but I've been attending meetings for a long time, and this is just an ongoing situation, and these people aren't happy, and I'm pretty sure it's something's not working. So I just wanted to hear, what would that look like? How long would it take?
So I'd like to make a few comments if I can, but did you have something to respond to that?
Yeah, just in response, we could take a look at that. At this point, I will look at what the options are regarding the potential using other funds or supplemental funds and reducing the amount. I wouldn't be looking at dissolving, simply because of the way, if it doesn't work out, creating one is a bigger process.
I know it's a headache,
but
we
would need to do our homework on what the options are.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. I also live in a lighting and landscape district. I bought my house knowing that. I knew exactly what I was going to be buying, where the money was going to go. I look at the amount of area that in each of the landscape districts that we have, there's a large amount of area. It's a very difficult task. One of the things it takes to do a better job is more resources. More resources cost more money. I think our crew does a commendable job based on what they have to work with. And with that said, it's whether we went to a homeowners association concept like the Del Webb, they pay considerably more than what lighting and landscape pays. And it looks really nice in there. And certainly, I feel confident saying if we all paid more, we would have more. I think nobody wants to pay more. In fact, we prefer to pay less. But with that said, you're not going to get more by paying less. So it's really that balancing act, working with our Public Works Department. I know they do a commendable job. They're reactive. I know if you call down, you got a problem, they come out, they check it, they fix it. It is what it is. There's really no easy fix other than adding resources that we don't have funding to fund those resources. So it's a matter of balancing the work between the district and trying to take it each year to make those needed improvements. So there's no easy fix to it. So that's my comments on this thing. Any other council comments?
I guess I would like to see this go to a subcommittee.
Well, it's actually going to go to a community meeting for all the districts. We have one every year, and the city manager alluded to that. Certainly, all of us are invited to go to listen and to work out the work plan, what they plan to do over the next year, where the money's going to go. And maybe
last year we conducted one workshop. Some of the people that are here tonight were at that workshop. We stayed here until we did a presentation, and then we went through every district. and we answered every question until we were done. And then that information was used in the final report. The process is that really, as your city engineer said, this is just the start of the process. The next step would be the engineer works with the finance department to look at the budget and how money was spent last year. There is a workshop. Then there is a preparation of the final engineer's report. Then that engineer's report comes before for a resolution setting the public hearing. So everybody has a chance to comment on that report when that resolution is adopted. That sets a public hearing, and then there is another opportunity for comment on that report at the public hearing. And we usually try to do that by the last meeting in June.
So notification of the public workshop would be done how? It goes to each home in a mailing? How do you do
No,
that?
we have not. There's if you take all the districts, there's a lot of homes in the district. We usually depend on the Reveille for publishing a public notice, even buying an advertisement. We do use social media. We've used the city's Facebook profile, which has nearly 4,000 friends at this point in Cloverdale. So Cloverdale CA, if anybody's on social media, does get seen. Last year, this issue was, the meetings for the workshops for the lighting and landscape districts were put up on that page. It's also put on the city web page. We don't have radio or television in Cloverdale, so we really do depend on Facebook, social media, the web, and we do use the Reveille.
So would it be possible to also put a notice in the water bill?
Yeah, we can put a comment on, in the field in a water bill. We're happy to do that once the workshop is set. My experience with those comments on the water bill is they're marginally effective. I mean, I really believe in Cloverdale, the most effective means of mass communication is probably social media.
Sure. Yeah, maybe we could do a combination of all those things. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Any other comments from council? Well, this is the first step. We have a resolution here. Would somebody like to offer the resolution?
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer the resolution by title only. City of Cloverdale City Council Resolution 004-2018, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cloverdale approving Coastland Civil Engineering as the engineer of work for the City of Cloverdale Landscape and Lighting Assessment District, and directing the preparation and filing of the engineer's report for fiscal year 2018 to 2019 pursuant to the Landscape and Lighting Act of 1972.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So motion was made by, or resolution was offered by Councilmember Walter, second by Councilmember Brigham. Any discussion on the motion? Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Brigham?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Russell?
Aye.
Councilmember Walter?
Aye.
Councilmember Bagby?
Aye.
Mayor Paula?
Aye.
Everett?
Aye.
Okay, resolution passes. Thank you all, and I hope you can attend the workshop. Okay. Okay, we're going to
Mayor-
move
Mayor Paula,
to
if
the
I
next
may.
item. One second.
Can I give my report?
Yeah, I'm going to go there right
Okay,
now.
thank you.
Just patient, and we'll get there. Okay, so as you clear out, the next item we're going to take out, it'll be our student liaison report. Everett, you're up.
Thanks. Hello, sorry about the conflict of schedules. It's,
Okay, speak into the mic if you
oh
could,
yeah,
please.
sorry. This thing coming up? Nope. All right, we'll make it work. Okay, so the high school has many events going on nowadays. Actually, thank you to Hannah Bresci, who was in the audience earlier, she left, but she gave me the exact scores to all the basketball games. The girls varsity won last Friday, 60-18. The girls JV won 55-17. The boys varsity won 57-21, and the boys JV won 61-25. So apparently, Willits isn't that good at basketball. For the girls varsity, it was their senior night, which means it's their last home game here at Cloverdale for the seniors. So they'll be this is their last home game before they'll be graduating. So a fond farewell to them and a great way to go out, actually. Baseball and track have begun their conditioning, and they are going to start up pretty soon here. Interact. We had a meeting today. We did the coat drive. The Mr. Schmidt's English class was successful, and they'll be getting donuts for that. We had a SNAP program last Saturday and the Steelhead Festival last Saturday. I don't know if anyone was there. Hey, I wasn't, so sorry. Hey, all right. So pretty good turnout, I suppose. We're also doing a Citrus Fair exhibit, so if you go in there and you see a statue of a woman who looks like she's from the Middle East, she is. Her name's Malala, and she is definitely a hero. She was shot in the head, and she survived the encounter, and she is currently, I believe, still alive. She won the Nobel Peace Prize, and she's fighting for human rights for women and children, such as education and other things there that we hold. I think we take them for granted a lot here in America. So, colleges, the mid-year reports for the Common App and other institutions, they're requesting those to be sent in. Big thanks to Mrs. Absher and Mr. Parks, our counselors who are getting those done. Students of the month, Eligio Ariola, Frank Rangel, Wendy, Salvador Herrera, and Gurwinder Singh. They're all, I believe I know all of them, and they're all very deserving and mostly academic students. Mr. Eagle is the 28th of February. I really do recommend you guys come. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of crazy, but it's also really entertaining, I think. Tickets are on sale for $5, and I would sell those to you if I had time. Citrus Fair Queen is obviously going on this Friday. Sarah Rose, Nicole Rausch, Samantha Santana, and Eden Winifred are all currently participating in dry runs. They're going through the entire show. There's a pizza party with those younger girls that Ms. Bresci brought up, and Friday is going to be an interview, a dinner, and then hair, makeup, and right into the shows, and that'll be quite an experience for them, I'm certain, as you heard again from Ms. Bresci in the audience tonight. Cabaret is actually another event that we have at Citrus Fair. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. It's like a dinner and show kind of a deal. The theme is Once Upon a Time, and it's going to be a Disney-themed cabaret. It's a lot of fun. This year we're actually adding in dancing, so I will be there, and I will be dancing. Yeah. The band is learning pieces right now for the combined band, so Windsor and Cloverdale High Schools are going to try to get together and do a combined performance sometime in the near future. I think it's in late March. We're also beginning pieces for the spring concert, and we're learning a lot more challenging pieces, which is great for us because we are challenging ourselves and more. It's been a really awesome experience. Drama has their spring play the 27th of some month that I think was April, but I'm not sure. It's called Three Waves, and it's about some kids who didn't understand why the entire country of Germany would follow a leader like Hitler. And so in order to better educate them, their teacher made a kind of curriculum and accidentally created his own little regime. So that's going to be very entertaining. I'm going to go see it. We have some very talented drama actors, and this is their last year in school, so it'll be a lot of fun, hopefully. And with that, I take my leave. So thank you very much for having me again.
Thank you, and
Absolutely.
good luck on your school project that you're working on. Thank you. Okay, very good. All right. We will move on to communications. We have a letter from Pam Stafford, Rohnert Park Mayor, regarding the library system. So that was under communications. So I know Reese Foxen, our library commissioner's here. Reese, would you like to say a few words on this letter? Please come forward and sign the book.
Well, hi, how are all of you? I want to tell you I enjoy being your library commissioner, and I want to thank you for appointing me. It's one of the best things I've ever done. So this letter, I kind of went through it and developed some comments, and then you can ask me questions when we're done. There's kind of a history to this. I'll get to that later. Let's start with the legal questions. At this time, we don't have a legal counsel that can give us answers to legal questions. We just hired a new legal consultant that happens to be the same one that Rohnert Park uses. And so they've already given an opinion as to the validity of Rohnert Park's complaint. So we're looking for another legal consultant. Our previous legal consultant, who was with the county, and the county, because of all their issues at this point in time, needed to focus on their issues instead of ours. We had to change consultants. But her opinion was that, yes, it is to be a collaborative discussion. We are to come to some agreement. And that basically it should go into a policy from that point after we have our discussions. Up to this point in time, I think it has been perceived more as a handshake policy, with the library taking care of all the inside issues and the cities taking care of the shell or the building, because they own the building in the first place, and that's their contribution to the library system that we provide Sonoma County. Our refresh was redone on that basis. There was also some consideration in this letter that we haven't had valid discussions with the different cities. And Paul Kaler invited me to one between Brett, who's our previous director, and Ken Neiman, who is the CFO, as well as there was an administrative assistant there from the library. And we had our discussion, and we kind of came away over our lease, which precipitates from who's going to take care of what. And we came away agreeing that, yes, that seemed to be a good, viable agreement. You know, you guys take care of the outside, we take care of the inside. It's pretty simple. I think we do probably, as a commission, need to put that into a written policy and get everybody's agreement on that. Now the questions are arising. So that's kind of one issue. So I do believe, and they went to all the different cities, and with the exception of two, everybody agreed that that was a good way to do it. The two were Santa Rosa and Rohnert Park. And Santa Rosa now has even more difficulties than they perceived they had before, but we still have to figure it all out. The next issue that came up is, it seemed to me like they were trying to tell us how to manage our budget. You know, you put this amount of money aside, this is what you're supposed to do, blah, blah, blah. And it'd be kind of like some entity within Cloverdale coming to you and saying, well, you have to do your budget this way. This is the only viable way to do it. And that doesn't work. We do have a facilities plan. We are taking, you know, each library one a year, because that's what we can afford to do, one a year, starting with Cloverdale. We now have Northwest closed. They're in the process of doing that one. And in the works is the next one for next year, which is Petaluma. And we're taking them by year and by needs. Now, Northwest was built a little sooner than others, but it has a huge number of problems. So it was kind of chucked up the hill. So it's being handled sooner. Before Measure Y, we spent about $33 per person on library services. Since Measure Y, we have gone to $56, which is nice. Measure Y provides about 40% of our budget now, which is also good. However, we are still just half of what counties surrounding us, well, San Francisco, Marin, Napa, all those other counties that are comparable in our wealth range are spending. So we're doing a lot better. Someday maybe we can do more, but we're doing a lot better. What we're doing with that money is we're revitalizing the infrastructure. I mean, they had a lot of those old box computers around, and so we're trying to replace those. We're updating the program. We're updating the system within that. One of the things we are doing is we are moving our headquarters, because I'm sure none of you have been in the basement of the library at Central, which is where all the work was done. I mean, you had to inch through the aisles because there were so many books and so much stuff being done that there wasn't room for people to even move around. So they needed to do something. This provided that ability to create a place where they could actually do the work. We had an elevator that I used to go to the second floor going up, and it always kind of rattles and creaks, and I think, will I make it this time? But it's those kinds of things. And that's the only elevator in the building, and that's what they had to take all those hundreds of pounds of books down to below so they could process them, then bring them back up so they could ship them off to the particular entity that they belonged at. Yeah. As far as capital improvements, typically foundations that are associated with the libraries are the hard drivers on raising monies for capital improvements. This is the way most foundation works. Ours is not working that way at this point in time. We have open discussions and communications because we do know we do need to change that if we can. And if not, then we need to figure out an alternative. Well, I was raised in Newport Beach, which granted is a fairly wealthy area, but not much wealthier than Sonoma County. So that's kind of interesting. And their foundation raised millions of dollars for their library. And it's an absolutely gorgeous library. They always put their libraries next to the fire stations, which I always found kind of interesting. So it's located at the fire station, and I walked in there and my mouth fell open. I was used to a building that was probably as large as this room, and that's where I started out as a page, where I got my first library, or my second library experience. And it was the foundation that raised the money for that, and that's what we need to get to as far as that goes. The fires have caused us some financial problems, but actually they're only estimating between 2% and 5% loss with property taxes, which is good news. It could have been a lot more, considering the number of structures that were destroyed. And we anticipate probably less in sales tax, because as people rebuild their houses, and a lot of that will come from non-local suppliers, because they're going to get these large developers to come in and do it. People will order things, and they'll be ordering them online, which means taxes are not going to come through. So the taxes, I think, are going to be impacted. How much, again, we don't know for sure. Something to look at. They talked about the handling of OPEB. We actually had formed a committee, an ad hoc committee, to handle our OPEB issues. And I think we've got a good plan in place, so it's not going to kill us. And it's going to be hard on us, but it's not going to kill us. We're going to be able to do that. So that was something else they talked about, and, you know, bemoaning their problems with it. We are opening, as of April 7th, we'll be opening 2 more hours on Saturday. So we'll be open from 10 to 6, gaining more consistent time, providing students more time on Saturdays to do homework, if that's what they choose to do. So, and Tuesdays and Thursday nights are still in question because, again, you know, what's happening with the property taxes? What's happening with the sales taxes? You know, how is all this going to come together? So we're not just going to rush into it. In the meantime, we're building the infrastructure so that when it does happen, we can do it. Now, when they added Mondays, that took quite a big chunk, and a lot of shifting has been done with personnel. At this point in time, 2 of the people that work in Cloverdale Library live actually here in Cloverdale. 1 commutes from Cotati, and the others are substitute people. So they come from heaven knows where. Sometimes it's from somebody in Cloverdale, sometimes it's further away. So when you get to your return on your investment, and every time I do my research, I find that the return on investment is for every dollar you put into the library, you get $3.50 to $5.50 back. Now, the library itself puts $370,000, a little more than $370,000, into the Cloverdale Library every year, which means you get anywhere from $1.25 million to $2 million back. I mean, again, this is quotes and this is estimates. But this is a consistent figure across the nation. So I can sort of rely on that as a range anyway. And all of that may not come directly to Cloverdale, but it's going to here in the area around. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to think of this as a system, and we're part of that system, and the system is greater than the sum of the parts, a good old Gestalt example. I mean, the system is larger than each part, but each part is essential and mandatory. We've got to treat it well, or it'll tear the whole apart. So that's, you know, an important thing to talk about or think about. I am so happy because every time I walk in a room as representative of Cloverdale for the library, I know that you guys have been behind me and that you stand with me and I can hold my head high, that you support the library and you actually support the library. You don't just give it a lot of mouth talk, that means absolutely nothing and does absolutely nothing. And I think all of you know how I feel about Rohnert Park and the man behind this letter. If you don't, well, anyway. But my last comment is Rohnert Park basically remained untouched by the fires. I mean, they went out and they built a ring around their city, protected the city. That was really great. That's really good. I'm glad they weren't burned down. I mean, I would hate to be in Santa Rosa's shoes or somebody in Santa Rosa. But they have so many things going for them, and it really upsets me that they bring this up. They have a university in their town, which brings people, brings money, brings, money to Rohnert Park. They have a large business area, which does the same thing, brings money. And the ironic thing is the headquarters for the library is now in Rohnert Park. So, money we put into that Rohnert Park headquarters is feeding into Rohnert Park. It's not feeding into Cloverdale, necessarily. It's feeding into Rohnert Park. And the fact that they could complain about having to replace their HVAC system, which is where all this started, which you guys did without, yeah, okay, we like it, it's costing us a lot of money, but we'll go ahead and do it. We'll bite the bullet and get it done. They didn't want to do that. They have since realized that their lease makes it mandatory, which again, we get back to policy precipitating leases. So that's something that does need to be addressed. And I have a very hard time the fact that they're doing this. So, do you guys have any questions?
Thank you for that detailed report. Appreciate it. Any questions from council? Any comments? No?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Very quick, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say, Reese, that I really, really appreciate the work that you've done. We're friends and I've watched over this period of time how much effort you put into this. And I know when I'm dealing with people who overlap, particularly elected officials who overlap with the work that you do in the library, I know that you've really been one of the contributors to Cloverdale's good reputation out there for being a city that gets the work done and knows what it's doing. And I do have to say I agree with you. I was disturbed by the tone of the letter. Absent any other information before this, I thought, why are we getting a letter that seems to me to be a one-on-one kind of problem, not necessarily a county-wide problem. So thank you for filling us in on that, because you helped clarify that a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Okay. Well, Reese, I'm just going to kind of piggyback on what Carol said. You know, I thank you for saying we always have your back. I think we do.
You do.
And Roanoke Park is not the only city that lost redevelopment money. We lost it as well. And, you know, we forked out quite a bit of money over the last couple of years to try and get that leak stopped on that roof.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was part of the joint powers agreement that we have. And I can understand how you're upset. I would be upset too. If all of a sudden we want to change the game in the middle of the contract. So you still have my support.
Thank you. I didn't even touch what the individual people received. I mean,
Thank
I
you.
didn't even
Yeah.
go there. I think you
No,
know
go
that.
ahead.
Thanks for coming and kind of explaining some of the background. I was shocked as I read this letter until I got down to the contact person, and so I know who was behind, and then I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. But it's kind of like, you know, you finally landed a great job, and your cousin comes out of the woodwork and says, oh, well, I'm going to need a piece of that, you know? It's kind of, it's extortionist is what this letter is. And it's certainly not in the spirit of the joint powers agreement that I believe we're a part of, and it isn't how this council conducted itself. You know, to me, when you're the landlord, you maintain the building, for heaven's sake. And then you don't then say, well, I'm going to now need a piece of that great job you landed. I'm going to need a piece of the action. That's what this smacks of, and it's offensive, and I'm sorry that you had to receive it. I just want you to know that I can't speak for the council. I see it for what it is. It's a bit extortionist, and or I'll just say it's extortion, and not in the spirit of the JPA. So I guess the lesson here is that the JPA needs to define where the responsibilities are on maintenance, and it needs to not be just as much of a handshake. It sort of needs to be in writing. So, but I guess I wouldn't support I wouldn't support this what looks like a change in policy to me. With what is suggested in this letter, and I just want you to know that you and your board have my support in dealing with this and coming to a fair and equitable agreement, which would not be what's reflected in this letter.
Well, I thank you. I know we've always acted on good faith. That's what we've tried to do. And I know the good faith now needs to be written down. And I think that's what we're working towards.
So without repeating everything that was said, I think you know you have the full council support, and we value our library, really value the after-school programs that take place, and that I would really encourage the commission to get that legal opinion and get this, because you don't want bad publicity, and if they're making some indications that there's things that should be done that's not being done, and I really think it's important that we kind of get that resolved sooner than later. And they bring up a valuable point, you know, redevelopment has gone away, and it has strapped a lot of cities, especially we're probably the most strapped city in the entire county because of our, you know, low income tax and sales tax, et cetera, in those areas. So, you know, I think as you look at the bigger picture, we got to take, it's not one size that fits each city as well. You know, some cities do have much easier, I guess, abilities to pay for things than other cities that really struggle. So it's that kind of partnership that's important. So
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things that always pleases me to be from Cloverdale.
Yeah.
Because it is a bigger struggle for Cloverdale to do some of these things. And yet you do them. And you do them, I mean, it's hard work and it's not easy, but you still do them. And I feel so good to be from a city that does that kind of stuff. And I mean, like I say, I walk in those rooms, my head held high every time, because I know that you're there and that you do uphold that. And you do value libraries.
Yeah.
And that's really important to the community, I believe.
it is. Well, thank you so much for coming this evening and for this report, very helpful. And I know we'll get another report in about 3 months on where we're at with the library. this, so
Oh,
thank
I'm
you.
trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So thank you for your patience, and thank
Okay.
you for listening
So
tonight.
we're gonna move on if we can. We'll take a break about 8 o'clock. So we'll move on to new business, and item number 9, presentation and acceptance of the fiscal years 2016, 2017 City of Cloverdale audit financial statements. Susie.
Mr. Mayor, we're going to ask our CPA, Terry Krieg, who created the audited financial statements, to come up and present them to you and walk you through them.
Okay, thank you. Terry?
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me here to present to you your June 30, 2017 financial statements. I have completed the audit of your financial statements, and I
So
have
Terry,
expressed...
could you speak into that? The reason
sure.
is because this is recorded, and the
Okay,
people at
sure.
home can't hear it if it's not...
Is this good?
That's good, thank you.
Okay. I have conducted the audit of the city's June 30, 2017 financial statements and have expressed an independent accountant's opinion that your financial statements do present fairly the financial position of the city's governmental activities, its business type activities, its major funds, and the remaining non-major funds, all in conformity with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. My auditor's opinion is unmodified, but I do have within that report an emphasis of a matter paragraph that points out to readers of your financial statements that there is this $1 million advance receivable on the books of the city's advanced funds to the successor agency of the former redevelopment agency to cover that successor agency's cash operating shortages. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the components of the financial statements and then run through some highlights of what is in your 2017 financial statements. As you know, your basic financial statements consist of a table of contents, my independent auditor's report, a management and discussion and analysis section, which was prepared by your city's finance manager, that sets forth some tables and narrative explanations of some of the more significant financial events that occurred in the city in the 2017 fiscal year. Also included are some government-wide financial statements on pages 12 and 13, and they treat the city as if it were basically a commercial entity. And then there's the traditional fund financial statements on pages 14 through 20, which present the major funds, the general fund, your retirement fund, and your capital projects funds, and then as well as your water and your wastewater and your airport funds. And then there's also on pages 21 and 22 some information on the former redevelopment agency, the successor agency, notes to the financial statements, and then some required financial information toward the end of the report. In terms of highlights of what's in your 2017 financial statements on pages 12 and 13, the government-wide financial statements, you'll see that there was about a net $1 million decrease in the city's overall net position in fiscal 2017. But when you look at that decrease, it's important to keep in mind that that particular statement, the statement of changes in net position of the city as an entire entity, that also includes a charge of about $1.2 million in depreciation expense. So if you consider depreciation in relationship to that $1.2 million, so to speak, loss on a citywide basis, if you discount the depreciation factor, then that would practically tell you that your city basically broke about even financially in the 2017 fiscal year, meaning that the revenues essentially were about equal to what was spent on an accrual basis for the city on an overall basis. Your business type activities, that is your water, wastewater, and your airport, did have an increase in the aggregate of about $235,000 as a result of operations in fiscal 2017. But it's also important to consider that your wastewater fund actually reported a $305,000 decrease in its net position, or a loss for the fiscal year, which would highlight the need perhaps to take a look at the revenue structure in your wastewater fund. On pages 14 through 20 are the traditional fund financial statements. Your general fund ended fiscal 2017 with a $1.9 million fund balance, which was about $300,000 better or more than where the city ended the fiscal 2016. The retirees' special pension tax fund ended 2017 with a $545,000 fund balance. That was about an $86,000 increase compared to fiscal 16. Your capital projects fund ended 2017 with about $3.8 million in terms of a fund balance. That is the fund that includes that $1.1 million receivable from your successor agency. So to speak, while there's $3.8 million in that particular fund, on a liquid availability basis, you'd have to remove the $1.1 million. Your other governmental funds ended 2019 with about $4.9 million fund balance. Most all of that is restricted for specialist projects such as streets, as well as $1.9 million in unspent bond proceeds for housing projects within the city. All of your business type activities, funds ended 2017 with positive cash balances except for the airport fund, which had no operating cash at the end of 2017. And as you probably know, the airport fund has consistently struggled to generate sufficient cash from its operations. Your former redevelopment agency, their statements on pages 21 and 22, actually showed an improvement in regard to almost a $787,000 decrease in that fund's accumulated deficit. That's pretty much an overview of what's in the basic financial statements. In terms of the notes to your financial statements, the city did end 2017 with about $11.9 million in cash and investments. Of that, about $1.3 million was belonging to the former redevelopment agency for debt service. Most of your money was invested in the local agency investment fund of the state of California. There was $5.2 million there, and another $4.9 million was invested in a separate investment account consisting of corporate notes and negotiable certificates of deposit. There was no major infrastructure capital asset improvements in fiscal 17. Your other post-employment retirement benefit obligation amounted to about $2.6 million for unfunded retiree medical benefits going down the road. Your net pension liability actually was about $6.7 million at the end of fiscal 2017. It's very comparable to actually where it was at the end of fiscal 16, because there were a large increase in the actual, what they call net pension liability, as a result of less than anticipated earnings by the PERS system. But that large increase in the actual unfunded liability was offset by changes in actuarial deferral amounts. So that's why on a combined basis, there was not much of a change in your overall net pension liability and obligations at the end of 2017. That's pretty much an overview of what's in your audit financial statements. I've provided you with additional reports, a report on your appropriation limit calculations, report on your internal control in regard to financial reporting, and a letter to you as a governing body in terms of the outlining conduct of the audit and any particular issues. I'm pleased to report that there were no significant issues in terms of conducting the audit of your city's financial statements. Your financial staff maintained your accounts in very good order. They were very responsive to the audit process throughout that process. Be happy to answer any questions if I can at this point in time.
Thank you so much for that report.
Sure.
Questions from council? Any questions? Councilmember Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Terry, wow, that was a good report.
Oh.
I didn't understand half of it, so
Yeah.
it was really a good one. But,
So there's a lot of numbers in that report.
well, I'm going to embarrass myself by asking a couple of questions that, you mentioned something about depreciation, which I didn't quite pick up on. I know we now start taking depreciation.
Well, yeah, I can answer. That's a good question. On the, let me see here. I think on page, let me answer that question by a picture, so to speak. On page 13, you'll see that there was, on an overall basis, almost a $995,000, so to speak, decrease in the city's overall net position. That's treating and viewing the city as if it were a private corporation. And when you do that, that requires that depreciation be also included in these expense lines over here that say general government, public safety, planning, park and recreation, and so forth, just like as if you had a private company. So while you had sustained a $995,000 decrease overall for the city's net position on a full accrual basis, that is, treating the city as if it were a private company, that $995,000 loss includes a charge or an expense item of $1.2 million in depreciation expense. So that, so to speak, is a traditional book loss. And actually, another way that kind of jumps out, or is explained, is on page 16. You'll see at the very top a line that says net change in fund balance governmental funds. And it shows an increase of $344,000. And what that is showing you is that across the line, all your funds, your general fund, your special revenue funds, your retirement funds, so forth and so on, that on an overall basis, when you combine them all together, you actually had an increase of $344,000 in the fund balance of all of your city funds, excluding the water, wastewater, and the airport. And you drop down right below that, and you'll see there is a deduction of $1,237,533. That is the amount by which depreciation expense exceeded any new capital additions. So that's what is creating this, basically, this $1.2 million loss in terms of viewing the city as a private company. It's the charge for the depreciation. That's a very good question.
Well, and just to kind of follow up on that, from a cash flow basis, that's usually added back in.
That is correct.
So when I look at 1.9 million in the fund balance,
yes,
where does that depreciation figure into that?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm, oh, I see what you're saying. You're referring to the general fund.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Actually, it doesn't figure into the general fund at all.
Okay.
The funds on page 15 and on page 14, which are your, your major funds, your general fund, your employees' retirement fund, and your unspent bond proceeds for funds, and then all of your other governmental funds. That's a real hard fund balance. There is no depreciation charges there.
Okay.
It's just charged only in the converting, so to speak, these fund financial statements to this required commercial type statements on pages 13 and 12.
If I might, I'm sorry, I guess, it's a good question, and it always comes up in governmental accounting, depreciation,
Yes.
because it's, in private enterprise, it's you look at your fund balance and your profit and loss statement, but in government, our fund balance is really, it doesn't really reflect so much where your general fund is. So it can be a very difficult concept. I mean, clearly, our assets deteriorate over time. And so what Terry has to do is try to book a value to that deterioration in terms of what's the overall worth of everything the city owns. But as he said, it doesn't really reflect on where you stand in terms of the value of the cash that you have in your various funds.
That's correct.
And so it can be a difficult concept to wrap your mind around. Because there's definitely, every year, the streets get older, the sewer pipes get leakier, the equipment and the cop cars, put on more miles. So everything loses its overall value. But if you look at the statements, in terms of how much money we're collecting in revenue and how much money we're spending, we're doing, much better, especially within the general fund. So I don't, Terry, did I do a better, okay job explaining it?
You did.
It's a
did.
difficult
And
concept.
one of the, just from a practical standpoint, when you look at let's just see page 20, which is the reconciliation of the cash flow statement on your business type activities, your water, your wastewater, and your airport. You see it starts off there at the very top with a operating income in total of $254,000, and then it adds back the depreciation expense as if you would do in a private company. Unfortunately, when the Government Accounting Standards Board made the requirement to present the so-called government-wide statements, they did not make them comparable to the statements that is required to be used for like your water and your wastewater and your airport funds. So there's a little bit of a structural issue when one goes to look at your fund statements, that is your general fund, your special revenue funds, and your capital projects funds. And in the sense that the Government Accounting Standards Board requires these government-wide statements that includes depreciation, but they're not really completely the same as a commercial entity reporting its operations. So it's a very valid question.
Good.
And then just two more, if I could. Cloverdale's unique. I don't have to tell you in the fact that we have an ad valorem fund.
Yes.
That really does come in handy when it's time to stop paying for retirement and pensions and all. And you mentioned the unfunded. When you mentioned we have an obligation of $6 million, I think it was for.
Oh, your net pension obligation,
Now,
yes.
That's not unfunded, is it? Or is
That is all unfunded.
unfunded.
Yeah.
So just backing up.
Well, let me stop for a minute. It is the unfunded portion. The way this whole pension accounting standard works is that, as you know, your city's a member of PERS. And PERS does two things at the end of each year. They have their actuary publish an actuarial report for the safety plan throughout California and for the miscellaneous plans throughout the California, of which you're a member. And then they have another firm prepare, so to speak, a report that determines how much is to be allocated to each city and each special district and so forth within California, to break that up and require that each government in California report its proportionate share. So what that net pension liability is that's the net amount of all of the PERS cash and investment holdings less the aggregate pension liability for everybody. And the bottom line is there's not enough assets at PERS to cover that aggregate liability because it's so large. So the amount that's reflected in your financial statements is your net share of that piece that's not funded. Just want to make sure it's clear that some of that liability is in fact funded, And what the number that shows up as a liability in your financial statements is that proportionate share applicable to your city that's unfunded, and it's unfunded at the PERS level.
And at that particular date?
Yes.
Okay.
And as they change the actuarial assumptions every year, that number can radically go up and down.
And then, just one more question, again,
Sure.
pertaining to our ad valorem. You know, I always have a concern, and I think last year, Paul, or the year before, Joanne was kind enough just to do a double check to make sure that we were charging to the ad valorem everything that we could, per the
Yes.
ballot initiative that we put.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that we can't charge because they weren't part of that ballot initiative.
Yes.
And I always like to make sure that we kind of have eyes on that all the time, just to
Yeah.
make sure we're picking up everything that we can on that.
I think you go through a process every year
Right.
to set that particular tax level, and that's part of what your finance manager does every year.
Okay. Do you look at that at all?
I
work with the numbers you do?
accept what you have approved
Okay.
as a city council and look to see that what was approved and passed over to the county is actually reflected and paid to your city, as it should be. So, but to the extent of going in detail to see if you have other factors in there, I have not done that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'd like to go ahead and open this up for public input. Clay, come on down, please, and
Clay Skelton. I have a question. Why is the airport taxed again with the water and the sewer? And as I'm reading it, it looks like there was a $9,000 deficit from 16 to 17. So the airport went in the whole $9,000, and I don't know why.
What page number were you looking at, Clay?
This was on
20?
Table 2, June 30th, management discussion and analyzed. And basically, you're putting the water, the sewer, and the airport together, and I don't understand why the airport would be tied to the water and sewer.
I can answer that question.
Thank you very much.
so would you come up to the mic, please? And first of all, can you give us the page number he's referring to?
I
20?
think he's referring to, is this it here?
I don't have it. Table 2.
Oh, you're looking at the management discussion and analysis. Sure, yeah, it's okay. No, it's all right. It's all right. I get it. Table 2.
Page 53.
It's under.
Oh, I see. Table 2 is the business type activities, and he's, I think you're adding and subtracting some numbers to get your 9,000, right? Am I looking at this right?
Correct.
Yeah.
From 159,471.
I understand.
150,496.
Sure,
So
no.
it's approximately $9,000.
I understand what he's looking at. The best way to look at this, for me to answer that question, best way for me to answer that question is if you look at pages 17 through 20 of your financial statements. And what you'll see there is it's titled the Statement of Net Position Proprietary Funds. What a proprietary fund is a fund that basically charges user fees and is accounted for as if it were a private entity. The water fund and the wastewater fund and the airport fund are proprietary or business-like funds, and they are required by United States generally accepted accounting principles to be presented in this format where all of your proprietary funds are isolated and segregated away from your governmental activities funds. And that is why they're combined in this statement. As you can see, there's separate columns here for water, wastewater, and airport. And then there's a total column where they're just mathematically added up and combined. But if you look at the detailed presentation, you actually will see that the airport fund experienced a $255,000 increase in net position in fiscal 2017, because what you were looking at is this combined numbers here. Can you see what I'm looking at here? So here's the airport fund.
So how much did the airport lose compared to
It did not lose. It actually had a net earnings of $255,000.
But what I heard was that the airport lost money, but now it didn't lose money. That's what I heard.
Well, you mean for my presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it did not generate cash. The airport fund basically had no cash at the end of the year and has historically had cash flow issues. The reason that the airport fund had a $255,000 increase in that position in fiscal 2017 is because the city transferred in $171,000 to subsidize the airport's operations. And that, I believe, was transferred in from the general fund.
It was, because we had been carrying a debt, this council analyzed it, and we had been carrying a deficit in the airport fund for many years. So to close that, I mean, the general fund has to support that enterprise fund. So we made that transfer to reduce or to eliminate that loss. I think that the thing that is important on these statements is if you look at the income loss after contributions and transfers that's on that same page on page 18, you really want to know kind of how much in a profit and loss basis the airport lost in 2017. Terry, I see that as $22,450.
If you ignore the transfer, right?
Right.
Yes.
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 So, I mean, if you look at the fees and the expenses, that's really probably the number that more clearly reflects what your true position is at the airport. So it's not, as we've said, you know, sometimes the airport, some years does really good, some years it doesn't do so well. We had accumulated a deficit of the airport, I believe it was over, this number was accumulated over about a 15-year period. At
least for the last 8 or 9 years, it's been running a cash deficit shortage because the operating revenues were never sufficient to cover the operating expenses. And the city then determined this year we're going to resolve that. And
that's one of the reasons that over the years that I've been here, I've always been pushing to increase hangar rents and other things, because you know we have some years we do okay, we break even. Some years we lose money, some years we gain a little bit, but over the long run, the airport is not a money maker.
That's correct.
So, and I think that has been the direction of the council. Last year we did not raise hangar fees. I think the schedule is that in this upcoming year we are looking to raise hangar fees in the upcoming year. The biggest thing that happens, though, the thing that we make the money from is the sale of fuel. So if you look at what the price of fuel did in this fiscal year, it went down. So, you know, the best thing we can do at the airport, and this is a tough one for people to understand, is the price of fuel is up, therefore we make a little bit more money, and hopefully we're selling a little bit more fuel. So, in the end, Clay, it's a marginal operation at best, and I think I've been clear with the public and the council about that in the time that I've been here. I think there have been some people who have exaggerated the loss at the airport, but it is pervasive, and it has happened over a number of years.
Okay, thank you. Clay, did that answer it for you? Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the city council on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Any final comments or questions from the council? Okay, there's, we have we need a motion order from the council to accept the 2016, 2017 audit financial statements.
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second? So Vice Mayor Russell made the motion, second by Councilmember Walter. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? It's unanimous. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if may I make one comment?
Yes, you certainly may.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Terry, you know, I'm leaving at the end of March.
I understand, yeah.
And I just wanted to, in public with the council here, you know, I came on board about 5 years ago, and Terry and I had known each other from up in Mendocino, and I wanted to thank you for all the all the hard work that you've done for the city. And
You're very welcome.
And I think we've come a long way in the last 5 years.
Yes, you have.
And to look at our percentage on our general fund, to see our fund balance at 32%, I think we all should pat ourselves on the back. We've come a long way.
Well, not only that, in terms of your staffing, you've made some real significant changes in the staffing of your finance department, and also installed and made operational new computer software system that provides much needed improvement in the ability of the city to do its accounting and maintain its financial affairs.
Thank you.
No, thank you. There are a lot of improvements. I know we were 2 or 3 years behind several years back, and I'm just happy we're up to speed on it. Thank you.
And thank you for your kind comments, Paul.
Okay.
And I wish you well in retirement.
Thank you, Si. Goodbye.
Bye.
So before we go to the next item, since it may take a little bit of time, why don't we take a 5-minute recess, let everybody stretch their legs, use the facilities, and we'll be back here in 5 minutes, so don't go too far, please. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to reconvene our city council meeting after a real brief recess. If we could, we are moving on to item number 10 under new business, which is the discussion of mid-year budget and potential approval of adjustments to the operating budget for fiscal year 2017, 2018. I'll go to our finance manager, Susie Holmes.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. The purpose of the mid-year review is to look at what's happened through the first half of the year and to make any adjustments or to see if there are any trends that we know about now that we didn't know about when we did the budget. So today what we want to do is look and see where we budgeted, where we're at as of December 31st, and then after that, where does it look like we're going to be at the end of the year or at June 30th, our fiscal year end, and what do we need to do to make that work? So if you look at the mid-year report, it basically goes through the revenues first, and we've summarized them, and I'll kind of walk you through those. The general taxes are your property taxes, your sales taxes, your TOT, and business taxes, and those are doing really well. Your sales tax is at, give me 1 second. Your sales tax based on the information that we've received from Uni Services, our sales tax consultant, is on trend to be at approximately $150,000 more than what we actually budgeted. These forecasts were done, and the three leading categories are restaurants, transportation, which is your fuel, the cost of fuel, and also construction. And they believe that that's because this is through September, so they're saying that the building that has happened through September was higher than what we anticipated in the budget. It does not have anything to do with the fires, and they're expecting that with the fires that our construction sales are going to increase even more. Okay. The next category is licenses and permits. And that one includes our encroachment permits, our building permits, our sign permits, and our cannabis annual permits. So when we were looking at this, it looked like it was at 45% at December 31st. But I went back today and looked again, and we're actually at 81% after January. There was large building permits that came in January that made up this difference. So our building is doing great, and our general taxes are doing great. The intergovernmental revenue, this is grants and like the recycling permits or fees and miscellaneous funds that we would receive through the police department. And they weren't doing as well. But then there's usually a timing issue with those as well. We did, however, receive an extra $40,000 after this report was issued for a rubber mulch grant. So our revenues are at 56% of budget. There's a couple of the revenues that we're going to actually ask that there be an increase in the budget. And then there's going to be a few that we ask to decrease because we think we overstated what's actually going to come in. For charges for service, that's a pretty obvious one, but our zoning, design review, environmental, our engineering and building planning are really doing well. We already are at 51%, and it's just doing really well. Typically, you would see some of your revenue coming in later in the year, and this is just doing great. The fines and special assessments that are at 116% as of December 31st. Those are municipal code violations, and they're cannabis related. So we budgeted $25,000, and we are already at $29,000. And they're not all cannabis related, but the majority of them are cannabis related. Miscellaneous revenues are at 21%. This one is your interest income, your YMCA swim program, your rents and royalties, fuel that you would sell to the school district or the ambulance, it's just miscellaneous. And although we're at 21% now, a lot of them are expected to come in June and typically come in June. And we have $25,000 in that we're expecting to come in or has came in from Ratto Group, and that's going to be offset in your expenses. So, and then your operating transfers in, those always happen at year end. You figure out what needs to be done and then you transfer it in. But with what has happened so far, with all of the general fund revenues, we're at 44%, which is actually a really good number because typically your revenues wane a month or two and sometimes a quarter. So you have that. A more reasonable indicator is sometimes the expenses. And so if we go through the expenses and we can kind of do the same thing, but city administration is, total expenses are at 49%, which is right where we need it to be. Police protection and public safety is at 48%. Parks and facilities are at 39%, and this is not because of any reason other than they haven't completed some of the projects that were budgeted. And those were there was a courtyard building roof repair that has not happened, and the library roof had not happened at the time of this, or it was happening, but it hadn't been paid for. So those two things are not in here. If we put those in here, they're going to be at or above 100% by the end of the year. Planning is also...
Susie, before
Yes.
we leave that, just a comment on the courtyard roof repair. We talked about that, and we actually made a decision that was going to be paid out of the Public Works impact fee facilities, not out of the general fund. And that was something, we had that conversation, we got a legal review on that, and that would be an appropriate use for that, but we can double check that again. But that decision was made back several months back in the budget, so. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. When we're talking about planning, their expenses are also coming in low, and that's because they have money set aside for contracts that have not happened yet, as to a CEQA report, and also a contract for temporary planner, something. We expect that those costs are going to be at or close to 100% by year end as well. Building and engineering is at 56%. Can't remember why. And the transfers out to the housing fund, which will happen but hasn't happened yet. It will happen at year end. It'll be at 100%. And the capital vehicle outlay is at 20%. And I'm not sure if there's other expenses that are going to come in that will offset that or not at this time. The street and storm drain expenses have been moved out of the general fund and are now reported under the gas tax. Any deficit in the gas tax is a transfer from the general fund. The general fund expenditures are on target as of December 31st, with planning and parks facilities at 35 and 39% of the budget, but they're expected to be at 100 before year end. So if we move to Public Works and we look at their expenses by department, we have a facility maintenance at 16%, year-to-date. And again, that's the library roof that was budgeted. And if that's not going to come out of here, then our expenses are still going to be low. But this does not, I'm sorry, the courtyard, if that's not going to come out here. And then the library had not happened yet, the payment. Parks maintenance is at 54%. This is because of trees that were removed from the parks that came in over budget. This already came to council and it was already, the expense was already approved, but it was not a budget amendment, so we're going to be talking about that later. The storm drain maintenance is at 77% of the total, and that is also a budget amendment that we're requesting because is it Rocky? No.
Susie, while you're doing that, why don't we just take a pause here, and
Sure.
there's a few questions, and we'll just get those knocked out before we move
Perfect.
forward.
Perfect.
Okay?
No, my suggestion is rather than reading each line, if maybe we can just highlight on the changes that you're looking for. And then I was also under the impression we were going to talk about long-term funding. I'm not sure where that is, putting our heads together.
Well, I mean, the challenge that we having at this point with your long-term funding is you have a number of major capital projects that you're working on, but we have yet to determine exactly what your costs are going to be. Primarily the police station and the development of Times Square is number one. The city attorney has a report that's further in the packet that discusses the options related to general obligation funding and discussions of that. So I think your staff is prepared to talk about your capital improvement plan. As a matter of fact, there is a budget amendment that we're recommending to allow us to go to a consultant. We tried as a staff to do your capital improvement plan in-house. The capital improvement plan was last revised in 2011. And what we found as staff, I think we were over-optimistic. We thought we could get into it and just kind of update the figures and bring everything forward. But what we found was that it was the underlying assumptions were so out of date that we really do need some professional help. And so we did seek out a proposal from GHD engineers, and that is included as one of the budget amendments. It was an overall goal this year to upgrade your capital improvement plan, so you had an idea of how much capital improvements that you were behind. We expect it's going to be a considerable number, but we weren't able to do it in-house. It was just too big. It was just too big of a project.
And you know, I mean, I don't know what the rest of the council wants, you know, but just to read through all of these line by line, you know, just hit me with the highlights. That's as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, well,
I don't know about everyone else.
Yeah,
well, I think, Susie, you know, I think the highlights are your general fund, your revenues look fairly healthy. Your spending, we've kept your spending under control. Some of the highlights towards the end of the year is we are looking to hire a code enforcement officer between the end of the year. Some other highlights is cannabis revenue. We are not, at this point, we are not projecting any, the results of your, how much your excise tax is going to bring. We know it is going to bring you revenue. We just don't know still yet how much it's going to be. And that's consistent with what the state of California is doing too. The state is not projecting its cannabis revenue. In terms of your other funds, you're doing your revenues are meeting your projections, and your expenses are where we thought where they're going to be. One thing I do want to point out, a question that had come up that's in the report was people often ask, what's the impact of Measure O? Measure O is worth about $445,000 to your general fund. So I think it's for the public and this council, if Measure O was not there supporting your general fund, $445,000 is the equivalent of about 3 police officers, is what Measure O brings. Now, it gets spread over. You approved a Measure O fund report for 16-17. It gets spent on a lot of important projects, but if Measure O goes away, your general fund has a big hole in it. And it has done a lot to stabilize your general fund and bring your overall fund balance back up to that 32% number. One question that always comes up at this time of year is, last year is how much money to move into this emergency reserve, which I might add is just a special reserve within your overall fund balance. At this point, my recommendation is we are projecting the fund balance in the general fund at the end, or your gain, sorry, to be, Susie, it was in the neighborhood of, remind me, about $45,000?
48 is what we started with, and we're adding 14 additional
Right.
thousand. So it's going to be more like 60.
And that's going to be our fiscal year end, June 30th, 18.
Yes, that's what we believe your gain is going to be this year. So if you did want to make an emergency reserve contribution, I think you need to be modest and realistic about, how, I think last year you set aside about $150,000 in that reserve. This year, probably going to have to be a little bit more realistic. My recommendation to you at this point would be you might want to hold off to see where your actual gain is going to be at the end of the year before you make that contribution, because really it is just all washes back into fund balance. Even though we hold it out separately, it all washes into that number that Terry talked about in your general fund of $1.9 million of fund balance in your general fund.
And when you open up that 1.9 million, there's different categories in there.
Exactly.
Because I'd like to see a separate line item for fund balance. And here's, I just don't want people to think that we're sitting on $1.9 million and we don't know what to do with it. All of a sudden, why can't you pave the street? Why can't you give another COLA increase?
Yeah. No, I think what we've done here is, your general fund, when I arrived, was down to about what we call a fund balance of about $175,000 is where you were. We've brought it up to 1.9 million. Keep in mind, one bad event like they've seen in the city of Santa Rosa, or a downturn in the economy, and that 1.9 million can go away pretty fast. So I'd encourage you, in terms of good fiscal management, to continue to be frugal in terms of adding new positions. And what we have done is, I think last year we only added really one new position throughout the whole city, which was previously a position that you had lost during the Great Recession, which was a new dispatcher. But we have been this council has been very careful about adding new positions. Now, you will be looking to add a new code enforcement officer, and the hope is that cannabis revenue helps pay for the majority of that code enforcement officer's salary. And then you get the benefit of a code enforcement officer to do other quality of life type work in the community. I think you should pay attention to what's going on in your lighting and landscape district numbers. It's unfortunate that the people that were here on the lighting and landscape district have left, but you can see that.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 5. where your estimated reserves are going to be. And this has been an issue, you know, the problem's not in the cottages. The issues in your smaller lighting and landscape districts, such as Iole Ranch. And the reason you're seeing a deficit there is one irrigation controller went out. And because that district is so small, its revenue base it's difficult to absorb those big financial hits. But the situation in the lighting and landscape districts is that you've managed them well. We didn't you know, the thing about the cottages, as I recall, we did not increase the assessment in the cottages last year. It remained the same. It was Vintage Meadows that saw the increase in the assessment, and that's really your biggest of your lighting and landscape districts because you have to maintain a park there, and we don't see this type of dissatisfaction in Vintage Meadows as we see in the cottages. So.
Okay, so just to go back to some of the areas that I want to address, not necessarily tonight, but that we will definitely have to meet on to talk a little bit about funding, all the funding options for a new police facility, because as we move forward to plan it, we need to figure out how we're going to pay for it and what the options so we can make a decision on that. We also need to look at Measure O, because if it's not extended by the voters, we need to have a lot of time to work through on how we're going to deal with that. And then I also want to see us look at that clawback from the state, from the former redevelopment agency. That's close to over just about $1 million. That's going to come up in another, I believe it's 2028 or something, or whenever we need to. But we need to kind of start putting them, and I think we all need to understand and have some input on how we're going to deal with that. Sure. And then comes the major storm drain grant that we just approved submitting for a $3 million grant, which is going to require $1 million copay. That's a $4 million needed project. But that $1 million grant's got, our co-share's got to be paid back. So we really need to take a look at this because there's a lot of big numbers out there, and I haven't really, in my head, don't have how we're going to pay for all this.
Right, and I think your staff is still trying to wrap your arms around what those expenses are going to be. You have, in my report later on relating the top 10 goals, the areas that I identify for you in the major capital expenses is the drain project, and keep in mind that was a grant application, and it's a very competitive grant application. So, you know, that may not come together, but it is still something that needs to be done, whether you get that grant or not.
No, and I understand that, but if it does come, we still have that $1 million. If it doesn't, we still have to figure out how to fix it. But we still should have a plan how we're going to pay for it, and that's the part I'm lacking, at least clarity in my mind. How are we going to pay for these things?
You do have, I mean, one of the things it is a significant challenge for capital improvement plan is a challenge. The other major projects, I think, is the signalization at South Cloverdale Boulevard and Treadway. The city engineer is actively working on the design of that project. I do not believe we have the engineer's estimate for that project yet, but that's a signalization that needs to happen. Again, the police station, and the third big project. Again, developing some type of sinking fund. Because you do have this final bond payment that, because of the way redevelopment was dissolved and how the city used general fund monies to backfill for redevelopment, and then how redevelopment was dissolved, the state essentially took your last bond payment, which would be due in 2037, 2038. You need to start planning on how you're going to make that final bond payment.
And that's one of the things that I just brought up. We need all these need to be on a board. We need to have a conversation. We need to come up with some agreement on how we want to move forward.
Right now, I believe that you should consider establishing a sinking fund of about $80,000 a year so that you are ready in 2037.
Well, the
Because-
other option would be the bond proceeds that we have, and that's what I know our city attorney's taking a look at to see if we can.
If I may add,
Yeah.
I know that currently, we're also trying to get in touch, your finance manager, is getting in touch with your bond counsel. The idea of what to do with the current money, the bond proceeds that you have, if somehow it can be used, in what capacity it can be used to maybe take care of that amount of the final. So, we would have had a report, but I know bond counsel, it's been hard to get a hold of them over, your finance manager is definitely reaching out. So that's on the list. Just going back, I'm sorry to circle back, but regarding the police station. I understand one of the objectives is to figure out, okay, well, we have the police station, we have Measure O going away, we don't have, we're looking at USDA loans, how are we paying it back, what other options are there, in order to just figure out, Paul did mention there was just I'm sure we'll talk about that some more when the item comes up, but just in your reports, one of my reports was a general obligation bond and how you go about it. That's just something to shelf when the bigger conversation comes about, that way the council has a little more background, as just as an option. Very difficult to get 2/3 vote of the people to get a bond out there, but that's actually, that's somewhere in your report as well. We have been looking at the discussion, I know it's come up, and we're going to be finalizing that regarding your ad valorem. How can you use your ad valorem, with hers all of a sudden skyrocketing? Can you be setting your ad valorem in order to cover those costs, or what's the deal there? Yes, you can set it to cover costs. We're looking into the kind of the more of the finer issues, like hey, what about this unfunded liability that Terry was talking about today? We'll have a further discussion about that, or you'll have an email from me. And then I know that there were other issues like just updating our Quimby Fund, our Quimby Act, impact fee study, the fees for nonprofits, et cetera. So all of that is on the list, and we have been talking about it as staff. I know that we had a conversation especially about that, the Measure O going away, and now what do you do? I know our finance manager is spreadsheet after spreadsheet trying to figure things out, but my office is kind of doing our part as far as the legal issues there as well.
Great. No, thank you. I just raised it because it is a concern to the full council, and we just definitely want to make sure that we do have a plan as we move forward. Because, good. Well, thank you. Anything else in your report, Susie? I do want to talk a little bit about fees.
Yeah.
That came up earlier, and I brought it up I know there's some concern both with our Cloverdale service clubs, who contribute tremendous amount of money. It's kind of ironic, the Lions was here earlier, they participated in the barbecue repair projects and doing a lot of stuff at the park, and then they want to use the park and we want to charge them. It just doesn't feel right, And the same with the volunteer youth groups. Most cities, and have youth park and rec programs that they host and sponsor and pay for using general fund monies. Unfortunately, we're not in a position to do that. But it doesn't feel right to me that we have Ponytail League and Boosters Club and those types that go out and raise money from people in the community so they can fund their events, and then we want to charge them to use the parks. And so I did ask that be brought up, and I was told this is the meeting to bring that up. And so I want to bring that up again as a conversation.
Okay. So back to the report, let me just say that both your sewer and your water are both doing great on the revenues, and their expenditures are coming in where they need to be. And we can talk about either the budget amendments now that we're requesting, or we can go straight to...
Why don't you talk about that first, please?
So the budget amendments that staff is requesting are in Exhibit A. It's on page 118. And staff has broken it up by fund so that you can see how much is the general fund, water, sewer, airport. These, there's a slight description. So, and we've categorized it. Previously approved expenses, this item has already come to council and it's already been approved by resolution. That's in the first column. Or we're over budget by a little bit and they're small dollar amounts. The second column are things that were contractually obligated by MOUs or contracts or some other fashion. And then the third column is discretionary. These are the items that we want you to approve all of them, but particularly column 3, we want you to look at and decide whether or not this is something that you're interested in. The first one is for $1,000 and it's for swag. It's for product to have at the Citrus Fair and that type of thing. The second.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that one.
Okay.
Giveaways.
Okay.
Like souvenir, okay, I
Yeah,
got it, okay.
exactly.
Okay. That makes sense, thank you.
The second thing is additional contribution for $1,000 to the senior center to help pay for their wages.
Well, actually, it's contingent upon their becoming a coordinator of something that we're working on, which is called a health action chapter, which is part of the health action project of the county that's been going on for the last 10 years, and there are 8 other chapters, so we're talking about that. I put that in simply to offset the cost of their having a staff member, and it has to be a senior staff member, like the executive director do that.
Okay.
And there are some internal costs of staff and that kind of thing for arranging meetings. So that's what that is.
Good, thank you.
The $36,000 is a contract with GHD in order to do a 5-year CIP plan, but then in addition to having the 5 years, they'll typically go out and they can break down how much each big item is going to cost over 20 years, 30 years, 40 years.
Okay.
In water, they're looking for a vehicle. This is 3 months worth of payment for, I believe it's a $40,000 vehicle that they're looking for. But I also want to point out that their revenues are coming in at $200,000 more than what was budgeted.
So the vehicle, I'm sorry, is this an additional vehicle or a replacement?
It's a replacement vehicle.
I see, okay, thank you.
If I on that one,
Yeah.
what we went with water and sewer was in the budget, what the city manager assured the city engineer is at the mid-year, if things looked like they were continuing to come in like we thought they were, that 2 vehicles one for the city for a replacement vehicle in the sewer and in the water fund would be considered at the mid-year. And so what you're seeing here is that reflected as our recommended budget amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So I just want to double check. It is 2 trucks.
One's a pickup truck, the other one's a utility truck.
Yeah, right.
And so if you go down to sewer, you'll see that that's a replacement vehicle as well. That's 3 months, and that's a less expensive vehicle, so it's $500 a month. Those are the budget amendments that we're requesting. In the general fund, if you look in the furthest column to the right, you'll see that there's a negative 14,994 under general fund, and that's the amount that we will actually be increasing the fund balance by making all of these adjustments, the revenue and if we were to pick up every single one of these.
So Susie, could you explain to me in the description, for example, the very first one, the last item, Exhibit B, there's a parentheses 313,000. Is that
So
income
that's,
coming in?
yeah, that's the next page.
So
And
then, if I go all the way to the bottom, are you telling me that
of the second page.
Oh, well, I was at the bottom of this page where we had 521,000. If we added up that whole column,
Yeah, looks like it.
we're ahead by 521.
No.
Okay.
So only in that column. If you go all the way over, though, where it says 26,717, that's what we're ahead.
Okay.
So Susie, just a question, going back to the Exhibit A, where it says the contract for Rocky Dale design at $64,500. I just was curious what that item's going to do.
That is a contract that already came to council for the design of the Rocky Dale engineering planning.
So that would make it shovel-ready for a project if we have funding?
It's basically plans, specifications, and engineer's
Gotcha,
estimate ready
for the storm drain and
Right.
everything. Okay, that's what I was curious.
And I think that also included project management under that estimate too, didn't it, Mark?
That's correct. It's engineering services during construction, which is, keeping an eye on a project for us.
Okay, thank you.
So that means we're about 90 grand in on Rocky Dale right now.
I don't think
Yeah, I
you're
don't think
quite
so.
that much into it. You are obligated under a contract for 64.5 at this point.
We've not expended the 64.5 at this point.
Well, then it says inspection services reimbursable,
Yeah.
Rocky Dale.
Oh, right. There's also revenue to offset that, and it's on Exhibit B, where it says inspection services. It's near the bottom. The number is 34143, inspection services, and there's revenue that offsets that expense.
I see that. Thank you.
Okay. Susie, anything else in your report?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
So if the council is acceptable with Exhibit A, and these recommended adjustments at the mid-year of the budget, then I'll direct that a formal resolution be prepared, and then it would be placed on your consent calendar at your next council meeting, so that we have a formal document that makes these changes to your budget.
I would like to bring one thing up.
Okay. You've done. Mary Ann, please.
I put in the back of the packet, because I know Joyce Mann is going to be coming at us for the AutoCast again. So in the back, I put the report. I asked her to do an official report to show everybody exactly what it's reaching. And it's pretty impressive. So she's going to be coming shortly to do this next year for $1,000. And so I'm just bringing it up and putting it out there.
So I would suggest that all those numbers be submitted to Susie and to the city manager as they draft the new budget. And we'll be talking a little bit about the swimming pool project for solar, if we partner with the county and those things, and what our share would be. So is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's it. I think we budgeted for AutoCast
Yeah.
in last year's budget.
Yeah.
If the sculpture trail wants support again, they at a level of $1,000, then we need to know that when we're putting together the upcoming budget. The same is true for the senior center. If the senior center is looking for support on some type of program, now's the time for them to start coming forward and making that request.
Well, I'm making it.
Okay.
And it's actually $1,209
For what?
for Joyce Mann, isn't it? According to this report.
So, but that's for next fiscal year, so those numbers can be put out, and then we'll, during our budget workshop, we'll talk about them.
The same is true, I think, related to fees. If the council wants to take action to waive fees for social for service
Cloverdale Service Clubs.
Service clubs. And let me be clear, I know that we've discussed this in the Finance Administration and Police Subcommittee, and I discussed it with Tex and the representative of the Lions Club. Your city manager routinely takes it upon his own authority to waive fees for service clubs. So I have had requests from the Rotary Club, from Kiwanis, but, and it's not like they have to jump through a lot of administrative hoops. They just have to ask if they can use the facilities. And I routinely will waive or reduce either encroachment for permit fees or fees for service clubs. Churches as well come and want to use the park either for Vacation Bible School or something like that. So I think there's been perhaps a misunderstanding or disconnect because this council and the city do waive fees for service clubs. Now, if the move is to completely eliminate all use fees for the parks, then that is an item that you would have to take up within your budget. And I think Susie's been working on reports to your Finance and Administration Subcommittee on what the value of those fees are. From what I've seen so far, they're fairly modest compared to what other jurisdictions around us charge. But this council could take that action during its budget formation process to waive park use fees for service clubs and sports leagues. But I would recommend that you do that as a part of your budgetary process, so you know how much revenue it really is worth to the city.
So that item will be on the agenda when we do our budget workshop. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
And what do we do between May, when the season kicks off and the kids are starting to reserve the park and need it? They need to come and see you up until that point to ask.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be here in May. I'm not going to be here in May. So, if it is the pleasure of this council to give direction to waive the fees for all the sports leagues,
well,
I think it would be helpful to have a policy debate on it and give us direction, and it would to do that. As of this point, I don't think I know that there are council members that are in favor of that, but I don't believe that you've kind of.
Well, let me just finish, if I could. This topic we had back when the fee schedule came forward 8 months ago, and I shared my feelings, and I think there was some support on the council at that time. We never polled the council, but it was going to be going to the subcommittee, and it was going to come back with a recommendation. I haven't yet to see it come back, and I keep bringing it up, and I just want to kind of put this thing, get it resolved. So I don't know, we can put it on the next agenda as a topic for discussion, and I'd like to see be very clear on which fees we're talking about. And the ones I'm talking about, and we'll poll the council, would be Cloverdale service clubs, not all service clubs, just the Cloverdale service clubs that contribute so much back into the community. They raise money, but they do a lot of projects that benefit this entire city. So I think it's really, especially when they're doing fundraisers in our park to raise money to do projects for the city, it just doesn't make sense that we would want to charge them. I'd like this council to make the decision, not them have to go get a special waiver, number one. Number two is all the Cloverdale youth clubs that are operated strictly by volunteers that coach them, put the teams together, they run it. It's all by volunteers, getting donations from people in the community. I'd like them clearly to be identified as an exempt. So, but I'm not suggesting we exempt all, but those particular ones at least to start this, and that's where I'm coming from. We could poll the council, see if anybody's opposed to that, or I mean, given some direction, and that can come back.
No, I could support that. Again, it has to be Cloverdale organizations.
That's what we're talking about.
Not folks from Geiseville or anywhere else, and hopefully we can still continue to have our conversation with the county, because those ponytail the leagues and those Lions, some of them live out in the county, and they use our facilities within the city, and that's got to
Trying
be a
to get
dialogue that we
partnership.
continue with James Gore.
Yeah.
So, but I could support that.
I think everybody could.
And, by the way, I'm sorry, I did talk to the Lions Club, and they are going to do that bus stop on the corner of Foothill and Cherry Creek. So that is still on their list. They've got a few projects ahead of it, but they're going to be renovating that.
I can support it in concept in that we don't have a Parks and Recs department, and this would be an okay way to do it, but I think we've got to be really careful. And if we're going to say nothing, like, it doesn't matter what group, what organization, as long as they're based in Cloverdale, they get free use, period. And then Paul brought up the fact about religious groups. Okay, well, if we're going to let a religious group have Bible study or whatever in the park, fine with me. But it's got to be every religion, not just Christians, not just, it's got to be everybody's got to be represented. And we can never say no to anyone then, ever.
And I'm not suggesting religious groups. I'm just looking at the two that I know that have come to me over the years complaining that they have all these volunteers and they're out there soliciting money, and then they have to write a check to the city to use the park for the kids to play in.
Well, it's not just that, it's the downtown plaza. I don't think a lot of people are aware of the fact that the Arts Alliance gets that huge free use of the plaza, and repeatedly. So a lot of people don't understand that or don't know about that. But if we're going to have a policy, then it's got to be fair to everybody involved, and it's got to be across the board.
I agree.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
And if you want to talk religion and stuff, then we need to talk a little more about this before we just do a broad brush.
Yeah.
But I'd rather do a broad brush than just pick this group or that group. You just can't do that.
If I might.
So we'll work
If I may,
on-
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add, I think you're correct, but there have to be, I would imagine there are programs in other cities. It's not something I know a great deal about, but I would assume a whole lot of cities have similar programs, and I'd like to know, maybe we give that to one of our ad hoc committees to take a look at it and get some input from some of our friends, particularly in Sonoma County, and see how it works for them, and see what their policies are, so we don't have to start from scratch.
Most of them have Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Departments.
Well, but nevertheless, they still have to have policies and procedures
So-
and various other things that we can benefit from, so let's just take a look at it.
Good. Our city manager, but before you do, I just want to make one comment to this. It has been with the Finance Committee for about 6 months now, so, yeah, city manager.
Right, we have surveyed other cities around us, and in general, sports leagues, service clubs pay fees. And that, that's, in fact, in Windsor, they have a very strong policy that everybody pays a fee because they view it as a fairness issue, that if you don't charge one group,
I agree.
how do you then charge another? So I think from the information that we've generated so far and reported to the Finance and Administration Police Subcommittee is that waiving fees is the exception rather than the rule. Now, that doesn't mean that we do it the Cloverdale way, but I just want to make that point is that in the cities we surveyed were Ukiah, Healdsburg, Windsor.
Windsor was in there.
Help me see, which was?
Cotati.
Cotati. So we tried to look at some of the cities that are about in our size in our geographic area. So it really would be, the typical practices, sports leagues, service clubs, pay fees.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Well, just one quick comment. The part that I'm missing is how many of them have a park and rec budget that they contribute to those programs as well. And I think all those cities you named do have a park and rec. I don't know how much they contribute, but they do participate, and they sponsor different things And that's the one difference here in Cloverdale. We don't have that ability. So I think that's an important thing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the last Finance Police Subcommittee that Councilmember Brigham and I sit on, we were presented by the Finance Department with a comparison report. And we just asked them to go back and tweak it a little bit, so that should be coming forward pretty soon. But we did get that report from staff. And there was something else about that report, too, that we wanted just some we also wanted it, when it comes back, we want to see exactly what the revenue is on the parks and what the expenses are.
That's what we were missing.
Yeah, that was a component we were missing. And the other thing, too, not to labor this, but we had no consistent language. Like, we didn't really have an ordinance. Is that correct? We kind of had policies, or?
We have some old MOUs for the sports clubs, Ponytail, that date back to 2003. And then also we have an MOU for the soccer, and they seem to state the same thing, but different dollar amounts.
Yeah, all over the board.
It was crazy, which is why I think it's got to be a set policy that we have to really think about.
So I don't know what you do between now and the next time we work on our budget for next year, but I know the Finance Department will have some more information for us to make that decision, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melanie.
I'm sorry.
One second.
Go ahead, if you're going to answer a question.
I also wanted to add that when we go back and we look at the revenue for 16, 17, there's one baptism that under the rules, and one wedding rehearsal, and then Friday Night Live. Everything else is Kiwanis, Chamber, Lions. They're all those, so you would be removing all of the revenues except for those, for 3 events during the year. And I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, and I'd also be interested, I'm sorry, Melanie,
Oh, no.
but I'd be interested to know how many times a year they use it. Are they using it 50 times a year, or are they using it one time a year? Because certainly we could also cap how many times. They may have 2 events, and then anything out, they got to pay. I mean, there's ways to do it. I'm not suggesting you give everybody everything, but it's just really, I think we got to be fair to the community. We don't have a lot of youth activities, senior activities, and I think we want to not discourage them. Melanie?
Yeah, I have to say, I just need more information before I'm ready to look at waiving fees. I think that we're kind of opening up a can of worms by saying that, this group, everybody in Cloverdale gets it for free, everybody outside has to pay. I think we're just going to run into problems, so I'd like to see a more consistent policy. And also, I support these barbecues, I go to these events, and the fact is that you get 200 or 300 people at a Lions Club barbecue, and there's an impact on the park. And that has to be, we have to be compensated for that, because, you got your, there might be extra stuff in the dumpster, the bathrooms might be in disarray. Sometimes after, post-event, some of those locations need a little bit extra attention, and that costs us money as taxpayers. And so that's why I have a real problem with just out of hand saying that we're going to waive these fees. I think that, the idea of having say, we'll comp one event a year or two events a year, that's fine, but let's make sure that it's fair and it's inclusive, so.
No,
Yeah.
good points.
And, because I hang out at City Park quite a bit to answer and unasked questions. The Vacation Bible School has like their little afternoon activities, and they use the inside of the baseball park, and then they have their snacks at the picnic area, and then they move on. So, I mean, they're using it like it's like a camp. It's just a camp.
Sure.
So it's a day camp. And, but again, folks are paying tuition for even VBS. So I think it's fair that they cover some of their extra usage costs because they're impacting the quality of the grass. They're using the bathrooms. Because it's a large group of people. And I think it's just fair that that instead of it just being, basic use, you going there with your family and picnicking, these larger groups have a bigger impact on these facilities. And I'm sorry, but I think we have to recoup some of that cost. So I think we need more information. I'm just not ready to write carte blanche and say, no fees for everybody.
No, that's fair enough, and we'll get that information. But Mark first, and then go
Just
back
to echo
Susie.
what Councilmember Bagby said, a lot of times I pay overtime to my staff to go out there on a Saturday or Sunday, depending on the event, just to basically clean up and restore. So there is a cost to the city. I just wanted to put that out there.
Sure.
There is a
No.
cost.
Point well taken.
And
Susie?
comparatively speaking, too, when you look at what other places are paying,
Yeah,
Cloverdale is very inexpensive.
it is, yeah. Susie, please.
One more thing is, in 16, 17, the parks were rented 14 times. Out of those 14 times, everyone was a Cloverdale resident.
Yeah.
Or Cloverdale.
And again, nothing, the only clarification I want to make, going back to the big groups, is the money, how that money's spent. They built the barbecues, they built the old scout hut, the service club built that scout hut. They're going to redo the bus deep thing. I mean, it's kind of a catch-22, but I've heard from some of the clubs, and I don't know if any of you have heard it, but I've heard where they're really frustrated that they put all this money back into the community, but then they will go to try to raise money and they got to pay the city. It's just kind of a double edge. So I think we'll have that conversation as we look at the bigger picture, but certainly we don't want to discourage these service clubs from raising money because they're putting that money into projects that we would never be able to fund as a city. So
Well,
we just don't have.
I appreciate that, and I think that it is a two-way street, and there's more than it just meets it at the surface. I mean, one event that happens every year that the city puts considerable amount of resources into and prepares for and gives police presence for and works on weed abatement is the fireworks every year at Independence Day. The service clubs that sell safe and sane fireworks and put on the fireworks show, that's great, it's a wonderful celebration, but I think the council and the community need to take into consideration that the city has never gone back to want to ask for some type of reimbursement for the preparation of the mowing program, because we have a very active mowing program here. We want to make sure everything's done by the 4th of July holiday. So we put a lot of effort in and time into it. And on the night of the 4th of July, we have a lot of extra police presence out there. We are looking for the impact of, I mean, it's not directly related to safe and sane fireworks, but boy, we have the impact of illegal fireworks in the community. So I think there really is a broader issue here, and I think sometimes that gets that issue kind of one hand washing the other gets lost, and sometimes the service clubs don't realize that the city is doing a considerable amount to support their fundraising activities, and it's kind of like the quiet company. We don't really say much about it, but it gets done. And if it doesn't get done, I remember the year before I arrived, the city was not very aggressive in weed abatement, and boy, did we hear about it as a part of a fire that started from an illegal firework.
Yep.
So I think the council and the community needs to take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Actually, I brought that very argument up to one of the Lions Club members. That very argument.
That's a good one. Yeah. Okay, any further comments from council? Susie, anything else in your report?
I think that's all I have for that.
City manager, anything else on this topic?
No, we'll just be preparing the resolution on the new budget amendments and bringing that to you at your next council meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that report. Thank you for all your hard work on it. And we will move forward. All right, so now we're on item 11, report on achievement of fiscal year 2017-18 top 10 goals. City manager.
Well, I know it's getting a little bit late in the hour, so I prepared a detailed memorandum where I listed the goal, and then I talked about our activities in the memorandum in bold underneath that goal. So I'm not going to go through each one in detail, but I'll just talk about them in general, maybe.
Okay.
How does that? And
That's good.
council, stop me if you have any questions.
We read it.
Okay. Well, I'll just speak generally to it. You had a goal of wanting to do more related to a global annexation. We had a lot of verbal conversations with the supervisor before the fire disaster, and then the fire disaster happened, and people's attention got focused at other places. But, being that said, we are still working on annexations. We have completed the new forest products annexation, Renner fueling station annexations in hopefully the final stages. We do have 2 active clients on annexations on the south side of town, so we are continuing to do annexations. And in terms of your downtown development, we have, the Silverwood building, I think you can count as a major success. I don't know if you saw today, some of the construction plywood came down and the stucco was going up on the front of the building.
It's going to look great.
It's going to look really nice. And then let's also forget, we have not seen anything yet, but it's because the progress has been sporadic. But Wilson Winery still, I want to remind everybody, they are fully approved to move forward with their streetscape improvements. They have their encroachment permit. They have their license, their license agreement. They're fully approved by the city to do the work. So, under community development, there was an emphasis on code enforcement, and David and Raphael gave a list of the number of complaints that they have enforced, and it's for 2 guys with some assistance from the police department. It's a pretty good list of enforcements that happened, and we are going to be bringing on a code enforcement officer before the end of the year. So I would hope activity would continue to more code enforcement activity to occur in the city. It is a bit of a two-edged sword, as you know, because you do more code enforcement activity. We also see more, in some neighborhoods and with some neighbors, dissatisfaction being expressed. But it is a quality of life issue that I think this council has shown a lot of support to staff to address. In terms of collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce, boy, some of these goals are really big. So there's a lot in them, but we have really made a lot of progress with the Chamber of Commerce, with the Experience of Cloverdale campaign. Susie pointed out, I believe that we are seeing improvements in sales tax, especially amongst restaurants, in the sales tax data from the third quarter. Really, I hope that's attributable to more visitors coming because of Experience Cloverdale. And the Chamber is doing a much better job on its routine reporting. Number 4, the police station project. We're making progress on it. I know in the community there's some people that are disappointed at the progress of the project, but I think the ad hoc committee of Mayor Paula and Councilmember Walter realize it's not for effort. It is development of a project like this is a complicated matter, and I think most recently, the dramatic change in the master site plan has had some unintended consequences and expenses that perhaps the wellness, Alexander Valley Wellness was not expecting when they do a dramatic number of increase in acreage of their site and what the off-site improvements that they would be responsible for. So we are continuing along on that project, and we will have at the Citrus Fair to show the community the new diagram for Times Square at our table. But there's, as I said, I think there was some surprise that if you expand the number of the square footage that the wellness center is responsible for, it also has a direct impact on its expenses. The 5-year capital improvement plan, this has been an area that we've been challenged, and I want to thank the council for your support of allowing us to get some professional engineering help here. The update of the capital improvement plan kind of rolls down into a number of important projects, especially setting impact fees. You have to do your capital improvement plan before you can reset impact fees. So we've been stymied as a staff, just not, in-house, just not possible to do the work.
So before you leave that, just a question on the Nexus study that goes to set is this part of that capital improvement? Will that talk about that for the different impact fee accounts? Or is there a new study that has to happen?
You will have to do a Nexus study, but the Nexus study will depend on the capital improvement plan.
Okay, all right.
So you have to do the capital improvement, you have to do the capital improvement plan before you can move forward with the Nexus.
Okay.
And the thing that you want to be careful of is you don't want to underestimate your capital improvement plan because that drives your impact fees.
Right.
So what we found as a staff is we could go and try to re-estimate where you were with where we immediately thought you were with your capital improvement plan, but we were unable to really give complete updated engineers' estimates because it was so old, and the number we had on the capital improvement plan was so much less than the previous capital improvement plan. We were going, as staff, we were going, there's something wrong here. And to then bring that forward, that much smaller number to do your impact fee means, well, your impact fees wouldn't be realistically set. And the idea of impact fees is that development pays for the costs of new infrastructure, right? In terms of dog park, skate park, we have made progress. We have identified the location. I think there's consistent consensus that the area next to Washington Street School is where the skate park should go. I have told the skate park advocates if they want to bring forward a skate park designer, we are prepared to hire a skate park designer. But the skate park designer cannot be the person who's going to build the project too. So we could use Quimby Act funds to design that skate park. I just want to have somebody that the skate park people support. In terms of the dog park, we looked at this issue with Caltrans land behind Clark Street Park, but boy, when you deal with the city, or when you deal with the state, you have a lot of bureaucratic process. And it became, when you look at the site in terms of access and parking challenges, I really think this council should look to the city-owned property on Asti Road for your dog park. Dog parks are relatively simple facilities, but acquiring that Clark Street Park property that Caltrans has would be committing yourself to it's easy for our legislative representatives to get involved. They give you, I call it air cover, but when you actually bring the Caltrans bureaucrats into it, then the layers of tasks that happen become overwhelming.
Yeah, they'd never notice.
Upgrades to City Park, boy, there's, we've formed a terrific partnership with Todd Lands. And Todd has provided a generous amount of volunteer labor, and in the snack shack, it really shows. One of the things that you have given us direction for in the budget amendments is for the tree removal, which means that funds for the snack shack roof are now freed up. So based on our general direction for the council, I will authorize a purchase order to Todd Lands for $10,000 to put a new roof on Snack Shack. Okay.
And just so everybody's aware, he is donating his labor to do that, and a lot of that's for the lift because of the slant on the roof and the materials, but he's going to do it himself because he was going to have to charge considerably more if he had to bring his staff in. So to keep the number down, he's going to do the work himself. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, the Snack Shack has, the loft has been completely, the scorekeeper loft has been completely remodeled, a new window. I understand the air conditioner is ready to be installed. The city purchased all the paint necessary for that project. And I just want to say, these are the type of things that Measure O pays for. And so I've already talked to Craig Johnson, when Todd paints, we will get the Measure O sign out there and get a photograph so the community knows. It's these special little things that Measure O pays for. Continue to build a long-term financial stability. Well, boy, Terry really showed that we were making progress in terms of financial stability. We have a long way to go still. I think you should hold off making this transfer to your emergency reserve, maybe to the end of the fiscal year. Continue, I caution you, be careful adding new positions. Measure O is critical for restoring the city's fiscal health. You will have to adopt a resolution in 2019 for establishing a Measure O oversight committee. And then in 2019, 2020, you really should consider public opinion research on whether to proceed with a reauthorization of the ballot initiative at the 2020 general election. And what we try to do as your staff is make those Measure O annual reports as illustrative as possible so that that committee knows where the money's been spent. Some other stuff, significant projects, we already talked about it. Police station.
I just had a question on Measure O. That is on our website as well, so the community can review the Measure O report. I just want to make sure so people listening will know they can go to the city website and bring that report up and view it.
Right.
Thank you.
And we do try when a Measure O project is being funded in the community, we have a sign that we go and put up and we take a picture of it and we post it on social media so that people know. For example, the downtown trellis repair project was paid by Measure O. And it looks great too. And it looks good. You're going to have a great summer. It's going to be a beautiful trellis. And then the thing we talked a little bit about in the upcoming budget season, starting your sinking fund. Susie's prepared some estimates for the sinking fund for the final payment of the redevelopment bonds. It looks to me like it's going to have to be a sinking fund of about $80,000 a year. And you're going to have to do it for a long time. So it's going to take a lot of discipline so that you're ready for that balloon payment at the end. And then finally, in the upcoming year, you should look to redo your water and sewer rate studies. When I came here 5 years ago, you hadn't done the rate study in 8 years. We've done 2 rate studies since then, and I think you're better off doing small incremental water and sewer rate adjustments than coming back to the public and hitting everybody with 10, 15, 20% rate adjustments. A 2%, 3% rate adjustment annually is just, it gives people something they can plan on, and it's more consistent. In terms of public access, boy, I think that Councilmember Walter really deserves a lot of credit. He has these terrific videos that Alan Fitch makes of our council meetings that we put on YouTube. He now has them on being cable cast. And I know people are watching them. I put in my report what our hits are. I mean, we're not going viral by any means. But people are watching. We had, last count, we had almost 800 views of 11 city council meeting videos. That's a lot of information, I think, out in the community that was not out there last year. So I think you should, in the upcoming year, consider adding planning commission meetings. So I don't know if Alan's ready to show up for planning commission meetings, but I think the quality of Alan's video production really looks good on this council and the staff work, and shows that we're committed professionals. Finally, number 10, in terms of continued outreach to the Latino community, your staff's really continued to work on Health Action Committee. Looks like Health Action Committee is really reforming again. We were at the Mexican Independence Day health fair, but there's more that could be done, and I think Sue Han gave us a budget number for an upcoming year that you should consider for perhaps doing some more outreach in terms of the Spanish community in your upcoming customer service survey. We have SurveyMonkey does not appear to be the right tool for that for the Latino demographic. We do get some, but I think we could do better. So the final thing I just wanted to include was a list that we've kept. It's not in your goals, but it's projects that have been completed since November 2016, and you'll see consistently your staff completes projects. These aren't the things that get a lot of attention, but you know, we are consistently in City Hall completing projects. I think every month you'll see there are significant milestone projects that have been completed since we started keeping that project list up to date. And the council's responsible for this through your leadership. So I just so the public sees some of them. City reserve policy, city park paving project, solar crosswalk safety system, Dahlia and Sage opening. It was this council's leadership that led to the rezone that allowed Dahlia and Sage to become a business, which I think they're very successful there at and are definitely an addition to our community. Active shooter training, new forest annexation, Hometown Heroes project, grocery outlet opening, Chamber of Commerce service agreement, collective bargaining was a huge achievement for this council. So I won't read them all, but there's a lot of good stuff on this list of things that the organization has achieved. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Yes. Questions from City Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question and then one comment. Paul, you had mentioned that the new lattice over the stage in the plaza, it does look fantastic. And I think the big reason why we had to replace it was because it was never maintained. Do we have anything in the works to make sure that it's varnished or treated once a year or every 2 years, however it's supposed to be done?
Yeah, I think Mark can answer. I think they treated the original installation, but it is something that you really do need to do on a regular basis.
Yeah, I've got it scheduled for annual sealing.
Okay, and that'll be in the budget?
That'll make a big
Will the crew do it?
The crew will do it.
Okay. And then just a comment, on Alan Finch, and, you know, I have to ditto what Paul said. You really make me look good, Alan, and I appreciate that. When I look at other cities, not to be mentioned, that are on Hillsburg public access TV, we really look good. We look very professional, and that's due to your talents, so thank you.
Just a couple of quick comments. One is, when we do our lighting and landscape workshop, I think it would be really helpful to have it videoed so we can get it out, because we have maybe 5 or 6 people that are very vocal on this whole topic, but we have 8 lighting and landscape districts in the city, or 7 or 8, and there's a lot of people that really are unaware, and it would be helpful so they could actually see the process and how the decisions are made, because right now it's just a few that show up, and there's a lot of people that are pretty satisfied with the lighting and landscape district, and I think it's important that they see how we come to the decisions we come to, you know, how the work plan is laid out. So that might be one thing we could at least look at. I don't know if it'll work, but we could talk to Alan, see what it would cost. The second thing is on the budget workshop that's going to be coming up. Some of the goals you mentioned, you're making some recommendations. I'd like to make sure we capture those as we talk further about the budget, so we can decide if we're going to set up a restricted account to start putting money in and how much money we want to put in. I think it's time to have that dialogue. And the last thing I just wanted to point out is we're facing some serious insurance increases on 2 areas. It's going to be about $100,000 impact for our city alone, because of a lot of things that have went down with the pool, and it's just the way it is. I sent all that to Susie, but I just wanted to let the council know. So there are going to be some challenges as we move forward with the budget. So I'm going to open this up to the public. If anybody in the public would like to address the city council on the budget items, this would be the time to do that. Okay, seeing none, we'll close it, bring it back to council. I don't think there's any action required. This was just an information report. Thank you so much, Susie. Thank you, staff. I really appreciate all your hard work. Good job. Okay, so with that, we'll move on now. We're to subcommittee reports. We'll start with the airport and the council member Bagby.
We did not have a meeting. We'll be meeting on June 5th.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. Finance, Administration, and Police. Councilmember Brigham.
We've already discussed at length, actually, what we had at that last meeting. Unless is there anything you wanted to add, Gus?
Nothing, Marion, thank you.
Okay, then our next meeting is February the 22nd at 2 p.m.
Great, thank you. Planning and Community Development, Councilmember Bagby.
Our next meeting is February 20th.
Okay, thank you. Public Works, Vice Mayor Russell.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will meet again on March 27th. By the way, the notes here actually are a repeat of the last agenda item, because we did not have a meeting recently.
Very good, thank you. The next one's mine, City and Fire District, and we met last night, actually, and two items came up. One is the fire chief did have a concern over the streets and the repair when they cut into the streets, and how after settlement there seems to be some sagging within the asphalt causing it's happening more frequently, he mentioned, and what the impact that is on the fire trucks with the heavy weight of the trucks. I know our Public Works Director was there, and he's going to be taking a look at our ordinance to take a look, because really our ordinance is very outdated, as he put it, and it definitely needs to be updated. So hopefully we'll have some time to do that, and because I know we've had that conversation here at the dais many a times on different parts of Cloverdale Boulevard as well. The other part we talked a little bit about was the emergency notification system, and I kind of ties into what happened at the mayor council members meeting. At the mayor's board of director meeting was really focused on emergency operation plans and notification. And basically this entire year for the mayor council is going to be focused on emergency preparedness, emergency operation plan, and all 9 cities are very on board with that. Those of you, I know Councilmember Bagby and myself went to the State of the County address. Clearly, the county, that is #1 priority for this year. So we have the county, all the cities are basically saying we need work in our emergency operations plan. I did bring up a question to the manager for the Emergency Operations Center in the county. He mentioned that they have meetings periodically. I was unaware of that. Asked who's the representative, found out it was our fire chief. Brought that up last night at our fire subcommittee, and he said, I'm not the representative. He attended a few meetings. I think really there's some real problems with the way things are happening between the county and the city, and I know that not just for our city, but all the cities. So I know it's going to be a topic for the mayor council department to look at, maybe trying to put together some protocols, policies that can be adopted countywide by all the jurisdictions, the things that are in common. I know our emergency operation plans, some of the council members voice concern, they don't know what their role is during any given emergency, and equally important, they don't know what their role is not. And there's really a lack of training and a lack of operation. So there's a whole lot of these things that were addressed. And it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time to kind of come up to some kind of a plan. So we got the mayor council group that's looking at it. They're talking about maybe joint ventures between similar cities, funding costs to bring in out, sharing funding costs to bring in outside to help work out some of these protocols, to work out some of these policies. But they just don't, none of us want to wait until another big one hits and then try to stumble through it. So my recommendation will be that we may want to have an ad hoc committee working with our council, working with our city staff, reaching out with the county, and he did make himself, he said he would come to any meeting that we wanted to have to talk about what they provide, what they don't provide, how we could better work together. That's going to have to take it right on to the mayor council as well, because they're moving in that direction. So just share that, something to think about, but we really need to kind of make something happen sooner than later. It's a big concern that was voiced for those that were at the mayor council meeting, big concern with all the cities in the county and with the county itself. So give that some thought, and we need to, and I don't think it should go to a subcommittee. I really think it needs to be a working ad hoc that's going to reach out and focus on this one project, one thing. So, okay, so that's one thought. That's my report from the fire, and I kind of tied in since it was so related to the mayor council meeting. So the next item would be the city joint school subcommittee meeting, and we did meet. And one of the things we did set up an ad hoc that's continuing to work, trying to figure out how to get funding in place so no kids ever turned away at the Boys and Girls Club here in Cloverdale. A lot of working parents. We have 2 parents within a family that work, and they have no place to send their children in a safe environment. That's a big priority. So Councilmember Walter and myself, as well as Superintendent Jeremy Decker from the schools, as well as Michelle Edwards from the Boys and Girls Club, we did have a meeting already, and we're focusing on a plan. Darlene Reuser, who's handling for Reuser Inc., handles the Boys and Girls Club from Reuser Inc. as far as their donation. She's participating with us, has a lot of good input. So we're working on a strategy to try to put together a sponsorship program and how to reach out to different businesses to try to promote that type of a program. So we're moving in that. There's a draft letter that went out to the ad hoc. There's going to be input coming back, and we have a follow-up meeting February 28th. So I'll keep you abreast of that. Anything to add to that?
Nothing, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that ends my report on that. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to city. Well, we had our student liaison already, so we'll move to city manager. Any report?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. City attorney?
Just what's in the packet already, I won't go through it, like
Your-
I mentioned, general obligation.
General obligation bonds.
Information. Also, I did email Mark and city manager regarding Senate Bill 231, which is something the council has brought up in the past related to our storm drainage. And the Senate bill there was an amendment to Proposition 218's definition of sewer in order to include storm drainage. So as we look, as Paul mentioned, as we look at updating fees, something to possibly look at is there possible to create that nexus in order to include some of that drainage into those fees as well, and have that paid for as an enterprise fund.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. All right. Council direction on future agenda items. I think we should put the emergency operations plan and the possibility of forming an ad hoc. And this is going to be a long-term project. It's not going to be a quickie, but it's going to be working with the other jurisdictions as well as the county to try to kind of figure out what we want to do collectively, and taking a look at our own plan, coming back, keeping you in the loop, and getting recommendations on how we want to proceed. So.
You would be great at that.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
You're the biggest bullet field.
Okay, so that'd be one item. Anything else? All right, with that, I want to thank staff for all the hard work. It's been a late night, a lot of work went into it. Thank you all for being here. And we're going to adjourn to a special city council meeting which is going to be Thursday, February 15th at 4 p.m. at the Cloverdale Senior Center. It's going to be our goal-setting meeting, so please try to attend if you're available.